Oh, hi. I was just meditating, listening to the sounds of the ocean from this app, from my brainwaves that are being detected by the Muse headband. To find out more about it, check out choosemuse.com, code TOM. Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Superbeats. More information is available over at tomsbeats.com, THOMSBEETS.com, or by calling 800-568-9889. The new X chair, it's the X3, is just such a big upgrade from even the old X chair, which I think was one of the very best chairs, if not the best chair, office chair on the market. Check it out at xchairtom, T-H-O-M, xchairtom.com. Cameron Hughes travels the world looking for the finest wines and then bottles them in this lot way so that you can save an enormous amount of money. Last night, Louise and I had the 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was extraordinary. You can learn more at chwine.com/Tom. We're reading today from Republican strategist Rick Wilson's new book, Everything Trump Touches Dies. Chapter 1, Vichy Republicans. Some say Donald Trump is the price this nation is paying for too many years of partisan bickering and division. Some say America's forgotten working men rose up in a single inchoate scream of rage at a system that for too long provided them with nothing but empty promises, bad trade deals, and government-subsidized carbs. Some claim it's from a generation weaned on talk radio, Fox News, and the comments sections of a million Tea Party websites. Some say it's a sign of a merciless God testing us to the breaking point. I still think that it's because we didn't let that old gypsy woman vote when she produced a photo ID back in 2012. All those reasons fall short of the mark, though, don't they? By now, it should be clear that Trump's election was a sign of the coming apocalypse, soon to be followed by a rain of blood, 7 years of darkness, and a plague of frogs. That may be exaggerating slightly, but we do have a plague of peppies, the cartoon frog meme that is a favorite symbol of Trump's alt-right fan base. And there's an odds-on chance that our grandchildren will hear this tale while hunched over guttering fires in the ruins of a radioactive Mad Max-style hellscape. The Trumpian heroic narrative is simple. Powerful alpha male warrior descends golden escalator. Forgotten Americans rise, don red helmets. Evil sorceress Hillary is defeated in single combat. Great feasting and rejoicing by the unwashed masses follows. Swamp is drained and all live MAGA ever after. The truth is, as you might imagine, more prosaic, more horrible, and more human. The mythology of Donald Trump's rise to the Oval Office is rich in Trump-aggrandizing explanations that ignore the enablers, normalizers, media fellators, ideological arsonists, and moral ciphers who make up Washington's and New York's political and media culture. They're the proximate reasons Trump was able to overcome the field of almost a dozen serious Republicans and Ben Carson. No, MAGA hat fans, you didn't simply rise in your mighty millions and elect the Donald all by your deplorable selves. You had help, much of it from the very elites you so revile. Revile means hate. Sorry, I know you're in an oxy stupor much of the time, so I'll try to move slowly and not use big words. Yes, Trump's election shocked the world, but the forces, conditions, and players who enabled and empowered Trump's rise to the Republican nomination and the presidency have been with us all along. They're perfectly explicable, if honestly embarrassing, to the world's longest-running democracy. For all the Trump voters claim to hate the swamp and the coastal elites who populate it, they owe the reptile American population a note of thanks. They hated New York, D.C., and media elites helped Trump more than they'll admit. The hated. I'll leave Russia's role in the 2016 campaign to the many outstanding books on the topic and to that Mueller fellow. It was the cable networks, and no, not just Fox, the elite media, inert major donors, a moneyed horde of lobbyists, and the professional conservative activists who ditched principle for revenue, clicks, ratings, and transitory influence. They enabled, empowered, and elected Trump, and continue to do so with their rolling coverage of his every presidential distraction strategy. Without a particular confluence of their attention, resources, and focus, the Trump clown show would have been like every other kooky email chain forwarded by your mom, or the contents of those narrow-gauge but high-crave Facebook groups like Tea Party's Patriots against the Soros moon base. I know you're about to search Facebook for that. The question isn't whether it's a real group. The telling factor is that in this era, you think it could be. The swamp played its roles and does to this day. Washington's culture is nothing if not resilient, adaptable, and resistant to change. I lived in it for years and watched it grind down the most idealistic people into the venal, smug, insular elites among America loves to loathe. Washington is the drug-resistant syphilis of political climates, largely impervious to treatment and highly contagious. Donald Trump may have infected Washington with his own nationalist STD, but Washington returned the favor. In early 2015, the political class of lobbyists, staffers, associations, think tanks, and the rest of the Washington ecosystem viewed Donald Trump as a political impossibility. He was the vulgar clown, prancing and bellowing on the national stage, but never for a moment someone they could take seriously. The old order money like Jeb Bush, the optimists like Marco Rubio, the purists like Ted Cruz, the 348 GOP candidates on the campaign trail, on the early debate stages, in the political scrum that was the 2016 GOP primary, were almost all experienced, successful, and well-staffed. They were, by and large, serious people. It was the quality of that divided field that let the political version of Gresham's Law sweep Trump into a position where Washington and national Republicans made the most consequential and destructive compromises in modern political history. As the election progressed, it took an array of insiders from the GOP and conservative movement to legitimize and normalize Trump for the Republican base voter beyond the howling edge of the Fox viewership. These men and women were Vichy Republicans, eager to shred their principles for a chance to touch the fringe of Trump's golden wig, eager to bask in the celebrity glow of his spray tan. Some Vichy Hall of Famers aren't people you might directly associate with the old guard. Locust Valley lockjaw Republican elite. No, oh, no indeed. Many were the purity of the purity posse, purest of the purity posse. You know, that we'd rather have a pure minority than a squishy majority types. These were conservative stalwarts. Anyhow, it's
the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. At least me and 90% of my voice. And it's Anything Goes Friday. But I want to, before I get into Anything Goes Friday, I just want to point out a couple of things that are, excuse me, in my opinion, at the top of the news. And questions that I would like to pose for you, if you would care to comment on them. The first is, and I've been waiting for this. Marco Rubio has introduced the first plan to cut your Social Security benefits. We all knew this was coming, right? The Republicans, the whole two Santa Claus theory, all of this stuff, it's all about, run up the deficit so that you don't have the money to pay for programs like Social Security or like family leave, and then use that as an excuse to axe those programs. Well, here Rubio's going after it's a twofer for him. This from Erica Warner in today's Washington Post. Senator Marco Rubio unveiled legislation Thursday, that was yesterday, to provide paid leave to new parents by drawing down their future Social Security payments. This is important legislation, Rubio said. It is also unique. It would allow parents of newborns to receive a Social Security benefit, paying a portion of their wages later in life. They would delay the date at which they begin receiving Social Security benefits. Brilliant, right? Ivanka Trump on Thursday welcomed Rubio's bill. Ah! Amazing. That's number one. They've already begun. Ivanka and Marco want to cut your Social Security benefits if you happen to have had children, oh my God, and been in the workforce. Number two, this weekend here in Portland, Oregon, there's going to be a rally that, in part led by a hard right Senate candidate, a state Senate candidate, Washington Senate candidate, that may well become, according to the news media, quote, another Charlottesville, end quote. And so I asked the simple question. I mean, in fact, they're moving the meeting venue so that they can carry guns. Would you go to a protest if you knew that the Proud Boys and that the gun toters were going to be there? And if not, does that mean that this is the end of peaceful protest in America? I mean, I remember living in Montpelier, Vermont, the capital city of Vermont, and there were protests out in front of the Capitol literally every day. Excuse me. Usually lefties, but occasionally it was the Tea Party guys. And in fact, frequently it was the Tea Party guys. Tea Party guys had much better signs, by the way. They were paid for by the Koch brothers. Which, is this the end of peaceful protest in the United States? Is that what we're watching right now as the right rises, as the hard right, the fascist right rises? The fascists, the skinheads, the neo-Nazis, these are all, I mean, this has traditionally been anathema to America. It's not what we consider to be in the American tradition. Even in the 1930s, the late 1930s, when the German Bund was, had over 500,000 members across the United States and was holding giant rallies with German Americans wearing swastika armbands and doing Sieg Heil shouts to Hitler. They were viewed as weird, as the outliers, as they got very, very, very little press coverage because they were, hey, these guys are weird. But this is something different. So where did this come from? Mark Sumner today in the Daily Kos has this just breathtakingly brilliant piece. And I strongly recommend you go over and read this. It's titled, "The Kochs Turned the GOP into a Crazy Town, Then Left the Keys Where Any Idiot Can Find Them." one of the things that we know about fascist movements is that they just don't happen spontaneously. They grow and are fed typically by very wealthy people. I've told you a number of times I've been reading, and I'm still slowly reading, Fritz Tyson's book, I Paid Hitler. Fritz Tyson was one of the wealthiest industrialists in Germany. He was the arguably the Charles Koch of his day. And he helped fund the rise of Adolf Hitler. And in the end, Hitler turned on him. Trump, by the way, yesterday turned on the Koch brothers, or a couple days ago. So anyhow, what Mark Sumner points out in his article is that for literally 40 years, the Koch brothers tried to buy influence for their libertarian ideas and for, tax cuts and deregulation that would benefit them personally and would benefit Koch Industries. They tried to do this traditionally for 40 years through the traditional means. They funded think tanks, they funded universities, they funded media sites, they funded pundits who went on television and radio. They helped subsidize the radio programs. We know this from the Ken Vogel's great reporting over at Politico. This is not all in Mark Sumner's piece. I'm adding some stuff of my own to this, but they helped fund Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and a number of other right-wing talk show hosts. And that was all the traditional stuff. And what did it get them? Barack Obama and Democrats controlling both the House and the Senate. That's what it got them. And they were looking at this going, holy cow, this is terrible. We've got to do something. And so Mark Sumner writes, so it's not surprising, perhaps, that they threw a long ball. In 2009, when a ridiculous micro-uprising began over, of all things, a program to help homeless people, homeowners who are being crushed by the combination of high mortgage rates and a tumbling economy, the Kochs seized on it. This was Rick Santinelli, whatever his name is, who, on, I think it was CNBC, and he said, we need a Tea Party. What was he talking about? A program Obama was proposing to bail out homeowners whose mortgages were underwater. A program that never happened, by the way. But Rick Santinelli was all bent out of shape about it. Oh my God, we're going to help the homeowners instead of the banksters. So the Kochs seized on it, fed it, made it their own, and created both the mob and the monster. The real genius of that moment, Mark Sumner writes, was that the Kochs understood the real glowing embers behind the tiny whiffs of smoke thrown off by the nascent Tea Party movement. Racism. With a fine-tuning of the message, that program to help troubled homeowners wasn't anymore about troubled homeowners. It was about troubled black homeowners. Remember this? I remember this so clearly. This is the 2000, it must have been 2009, right? The first year of the Obama presidency. And in fact, I had guys on this show saying this. It was about troubled black homeowners. It was about blacks who had gone way out on a limb to buy homes they couldn't afford and who were now rightly getting what they deserved. It was about blacks who had overreached their station, got on out of their place, just like Barack Obama. And he says those first gatherings of the Tea Party had signs of what was to come. Literally, there were signs that said Barack Obama was a Muslim, signs that says the government was still the problem, signs that said ordinary Americans were taxed enough already, TEA. It was like a signal flare going up for the Kochs, writes Mark Sumner. So they took a gamble and trained one of their biggest guns, Americans for Prosperity, toward the Tea Party. They provided the bus, they booked the locations, they worked the phones to get the news on AM radio and local television. They sent out both their Koch-trained candidates and their Koch-funded teams to make sure that the energy levels stayed high. The Kochs had discovered that rare nerve of racism and working-class white resentment was still there. It was just as throbbing and vital as it had been for Strom Thurmond and Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. The stories about how the money paid by, stolen from hardworking whites was going to help lazy blacks and invading browns didn't have to be created from scratch. They just need a little touch-up. The Kochs found that the more they reached into those spaces, the more angry, ugly energy they found. They found that Republican voters didn't really care about deficits or any of that bunk. They cared about hate. The Kochs had spent more than 40 years winning over the GOP by handing out cash and working to build policy. But it took less than 8 years to utterly transform the party by simply touching the raw nerves of racism and xenophobia. The success of that small investment in the Tea Party had to be heady. even for people like the Koch brothers. By 2014, they'd taken the Republican Party from the wilderness of a minority in both houses to the largest Republican majority in a century on the backs of racism and the Tea Party. They had taken the broken pieces of the Republican Party and turned it into a mighty engine. And all it took was embracing the fear that white America, straight America, Christian America was under threat from an insurgent wave of brown Muslim invaders waving rainbow flags. It worked beautifully. The Republican Party was back in the driver's seat, and the Koch brothers were driving with a cluster of freshly minted Freedom Caucus congressmen who knew exactly whose hands were on the controls. Right? So the Koch, our plan is working out just as we planned. Now we've got control of the Republican Party, and the Republican Party has control of America. And then Donald Trump strolled in, grabbed the keys to the engine they had built, and drove it away, to quote Mark Sumner. To their further shock, the Freedom Caucus Republicans that they had installed as carefully as screwing a bulb into a socket were happy to hand over their controls to Trump. The new Republican Party is not about policy at all. It's about owning people, figuratively and literally, about getting in the face of those blacks and Mexicans and libtards and making them hurt, even if it takes hurting everyone to make it happen. He writes, there's nothing more threatening to the new cult leader than the old cult leader, right? Trump is the new cult leader. Who's the old cult leader? The Kochs. By some estimates, the Kochs alone but see, it's not as if their investments bought them nothing. By some estimates, the Kochs alone are saving $1 billion a year thanks to a tax cut bill that Donald Trump doodled on. That's a pretty good payday. Amazing stuff, right? I mean, thought-provoking, amazing stuff. So, I've seeded the field for you. We'll pick up your phone calls after the break. I know the lines pretty much filled up in the first few minutes, so at least some of the early calls maybe not be commenting on what I was talking about, which is just fine. It's Anything Goes Friday. But, if you have something to say about this, give us a shout. It's not right now, though. All the lines are full.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
But as people go, people will come. And anyhow, it's 18 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Jared in Downington, Pennsylvania. Hey, Jared, thanks for listening on our app. What's up?
Hello, Tom. I'm calling today on Anything Goes Friday to ask you, why is it that you haven't, when you were discussing the Helsinki summit, the one thing that you and pretty much everybody else seemed to miss, except for Paul Jay of the Real News Network and Eric Dracer of Counterpunch Radio, is that Trump and Putin, we don't know what the transcript of what they were talking about.
There is no transcript.
Nobody knows.
Right.
Exactly. And nobody seems to be wanting to talk about that or bring that up.
Yeah.
And
that's been all over the media. I mean, CNN, MSNBC, that's been repeated 1,000 times. That they were in private. Nobody knows what they said. And to this day, I mean, yesterday, Dan Coates, in an interview with the media, I forget which media, but it was replayed on MSNBC, Dan Coates said, I still don't know what they said.
Well, The Guardian speculated that Donald Trump and Putin, that Trump discussed the possibility of the United States invading Iran to Putin in exchange that Russia will stay out of it like they did in Libya. And
but we have no evidence that is actually, in fact, what happened. Then that's probably why it's not on the mainstream media.
Exactly, but that's a very strong possibility. That's the possibility that.
I think that's actually unlikely. I don't think Trump intellectually can operate at that level of policy.
You don't think that's a possibility that Trump isn't?
I think it's a possibility. I think it's unlikely because I don't think Trump. If Trump understood the situation in Iran, if he understood that Russia has an alliance with Iran, he wouldn't be talking about it the way he does. I mean, the stakes are really high. Invading Iran could lead to World War III. I'm sure people have tried to tell him this over and over again, but he's been watching these Fox News pundits who he thinks are policy experts. And the Fox News and in fact, he hired one of them to be his Secretary of State, John Bolton. And these Fox News pundits have been saying, in fact, John Bolton wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post titled, "If you want to stop Iran from having a bomb, bomb Iran." That was like just 2 years ago. So, I think that, Trump's knowledge of world affairs, I mean, yesterday in his speech, he didn't know the difference between Britain, Great Britain, and England. Right? Britain is the island on which Scotland, Wales, and England exist. Great Britain is that island plus Northern Ireland, and England is the southern part of that island. And Trump didn't know that. And he said, in his stump speech last night, in his rally last night, he says, England, Great Britain, whatever they call it. They used to call it something. I mean, it was incoherent. I really don't think he is well informed enough or smart enough to be having, serious policy discussions with anybody, and that's why his advisors are freaked out, and that's why they think that Putin basically ate his lunch. I think Putin told him, what the routine was, and it probably started with, we can help you stay in power if you want. I know how to do this, but who knows? Jared, I got to run, but thank you for the call. It is thought-provoking, and we need to be trying to figure out what's going on here. It's coming up on 22 minutes past the hour. Oh, hi. I was just meditating, listening to the sounds of the ocean from this app, from my brainwaves that are being detected by the Muse headband. To find out more about it, check out choosemuse.com, code TOM. Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Superbeats. More information is available over at tomsbeets.com, THOMSBEETS.com, or by calling 800-568-9889. The new X chair, it's the X3, is just such a big upgrade from even the old X chair, which I think was one of the very best chairs, if not the best chair, office chair on the market. Check it out at xchairtom, THOM, xchairtom.com. Cameron Hughes travels the world looking for the finest wines and then bottles them in this lot way so that you can save an enormous amount of money. Last night, Louise and I had the 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was extraordinary. You can learn more at chwine.com/Tom.
Want to connect with the
in Jeffersonville, Ohio. Hey, John, what's on your mind? Thanks for listening to us on SiriusXM.
Yeah, Tom, basically what I wanted to talk about is this idea of throwing away your vote. I lost a very good friend this weekend as far as he doesn't want to talk to me anymore simply because I told him he threw his vote away when he voted for a third party.
Right.
All the Democrats that we run in office are not going to be ideologically pure.
Yep.
I don't particularly like Joe Manchin, but you know what? I would much rather have a Joe Manchin in there than I would a Republican.
Yeah, I don't. Politically, I don't like Joe Manchin at all. I know him.
Right.
But if I lived in West Virginia, I would vote for him, given that he was running against a Republican. I mean, come on, this is common sense.
Right. But my point is this, okay? You vote for the Democrat no matter what, because any Democrat is better than a Republican.
Right.
And then you work in the primaries to support progressives in every part of the country that we can push this ball forward in a progressive manner.
Yep.
But we have to support conservatives in a conservative district if he's running. And why some of these Bernie crats don't understand that, just my head just wants to explode.
I don't know any Bernie crats who don't understand that. I mean, that was the whole point of Bernie saying that he wasn't going to run as a third-party candidate. That's the whole point of him running in the primary. That was the whole point of him after he lost the primary, being the number 2 politician in the United States in terms of the number of people he spoke to and the number of times he spoke to them, rallies and things, on behalf of Hillary Clinton. Behind Tim Kaine, the only other politician in America who spoke to more people than Tim Kaine in the United States, encouraging them to vote for Hillary Clinton, was Bernie Sanders. I don't know any Bernie followers or Bernie-crats or whatever who are saying, "Oh yeah, this Joe Manchin." I think, John, you're buying into a media story that is that's out of control, frankly.
Right. Wait, just a second. I may have used the wrong words. My point was, I just don't understand anybody who can throw their vote away to a third party and not support a Democrat. And I may have misused Bernie crats but that's my point was.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't understand why you can just throw away your vote. I don't get that.
I absolutely agree with you. And what was so cool about the way you constructed that was because halfway through what you were starting to say, I nearly interrupted you and said, no, the time for that fight is in the primaries, when we were talking about Joe Manchin.
Exactly.
And then you went right there. And I was like, nailed it, John, nailed it. Okay,
right.
John, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Excellent point. And let's see here, Laura in Chicago. Hey, Laura, thanks for listening to Chicago's Progressive Talk. What's up?
Hey, hi. Tom, I am really, really worried that it's become perfectly obvious to me that our American experiment in these 50 states is failing and that it's unraveling. The real disrespect and complete corruption of the bedrock of our society, which is our democratic vote, was the last straw for me. So I really am afraid that we are devolving into a civil war. And I want to stop pointing fingers at each other and try to figure out a way that we could diffuse this situation. And the only thing that I can come up with is that if the right and the left come together on working towards the ability for states to secede. Texas wants to secede. California wants to secede.
No, Texas and California don't want to secede, Laura. The vast majority of people in both states are loving being members of part of the United States.
Except
You have small secessionist movements.
They're not going to love a civil war. They're not going to love a
Yeah, no, they're not. Laura, I'm sorry we're hitting the break here, but it's a great topic, and I would have liked to have had a longer conversation with you about it. I'm sorry. But I don't think making it easy for states to secede, to remove themselves from the Union, to separate themselves from the Union, is something that we should be encouraging. I think we need to be bringing this country back together.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be back with more of your calls. Anything Goes Friday right after this. In the Thom Hartmann University Book Club today, we're reading from American Holocaust by David Stannard, The Conquest of the New World. This is from the prologue. Just 21 years after Columbus's first landing in the Caribbean, the vastly populous island that the explorer had renamed Hispaniola was effectively desolate. Nearly 8 million people, those Columbus chose to call Indians, had been killed by violence, disease, and despair. It took a little longer, about the span of a single human generation, but what happened on Hispaniola was the equivalent of more than 50 Hiroshimas, and Hispaniola was only the beginning. Within no more than a handful of generations following their first encounters with the Europeans, the vast majority of the Western Hemisphere's native peoples had been exterminated. The pace and magnitude of their obliteration varied from place to place and from time to time, but for years, now historical demographers have been uncovering in region upon region post-Columbia depopulation rates of between 90 and 98%, with such regularity that an overall decline of 95% in Native American population has become a working rule of thumb. What this means is that, on average, for every 20 natives alive at the moment of European contact, when the lands of the Americans teemed with numerous tens of millions of people, only one stood in their place when the bloodbath was over. To put this in a contemporary context, the ratio of native survivorship in the Americas following European contact was less than half of what the human survivorship ratio would be in the United States today if every single white person and every single black person died. The destruction of the Indians of the Americas was far and away the most massive act of genocide in the history of the world. That is why, as one historian aptly has said, far from the heroic and romantic heraldry that customarily is used to symbolize the European settlement of the Americas, the emblem most congruent with reality would be a pyramid of skulls. Scholars estimate the size of the post-Columbian Holocaust have climbed sharply in recent decades. Too often, however, academic discussions of this ghastly event have reduced the devastated indigenous people and their cultures to statistical calculations in reconciling demographic analyses. It was easy for this to happen. From the very beginning, merely taking the account of so mammoth a cataclysm seemed an impossible task. Wrote one Spanish adventurer who arrived in the New World only 2 decades after Columbus's first landing, and who himself openly reveled in the torrent of native blood. There was neither, quote, paper nor time enough to tell all that the conquistadors did to ruin the Indians and rob them and destroy the land, end quote. As a result, the very effort to describe the disaster's overwhelming magnitude has tended to obliterate both the writer's and the reader's sense of its truly horrific human element. In an apparent effort to contradict or counteract this tendency, one writer, Tsvetsan Todorov, began his study of the events of 1492 and immediately thereafter with an epigraph from Diego de Landa's Relación de las Casas de Yucatán. Quote, the captain, Alonso Lopez de Avila, brother-in-law of the Adelmanto de Montejo, captured during the war in Bacalan a young Indian woman of lovely and gracious appearance. She had promised her husband, fearful lest they should kill him in the war, not to have relations with any other man but him, and so no persuasion was sufficient to prevent her from taking her own life to avoid being defiled by another man. And because of this, they had her thrown to the dogs. Toborov then dedicates his book to the memory of a Mayan woman devoured by dogs. It is important to try and hold in mind an image of that woman and her brothers and sisters and the innumerable others who suffered similar fates as one reads Todorov's book, or this one, or any other work on this subject, just as it is essential, as one reads about the Jewish Holocaust or the horrors of the African slave trade, to keep in mind the treasure of a single life in order to avoid becoming emotionally anesthetized by the sheer force of such overwhelming human evil and destruction. There is, for example, a case of a small Indian boy whose name no one knows today, and whose unmarked skeletal remains are hopelessly intermingled with those of hundreds of anonymous others in a mass grave on the American plains, but a boy who once played on the banks of a quiet creek in eastern Colorado, until the morning in 1864, when the American soldiers came. Then, as one of the cavalrymen later told it, while his compatriots were slaughtering and mutilating the bodies of all the women and all of the children they could catch, he spotted the boy trying to flee. Quote, there was one child, probably 3 years old, just big enough to walk through the sand. The Indians had gone ahead and this little child was behind following after them. The little fellow was perfectly naked, traveling on the sand. I saw one man get off his horse at a distance of about 75 yards and drop his rifle and fire, but he missed the child. Another man came up and said, let me try the son of a bitch, I can hit him. He got down off his horse, kneeled down and fired at the little child, but he missed him too. A third man came up and made a similar remark and fired, and the little fellow dropped. We must do what we can to recapture and try to understand in human terms what it was that was crushed, what it was that was butchered. It is not enough merely to acknowledge that much was lost. So close to total was the human incineration and carnage. And it continues.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, speaking the truth to multinational corporations would really rather you didn't know all about. Donald in Aurora, Illinois Donald, what's on your mind today?
Well, I was listening to MSNBC, and apparently there's a Marine veteran that fought in the Iraq War. He was married to an illegal Hispanic, and she got sent back.
Yeah.
He voted Republican. He voted for Donald Trump.
Yep.
Sent him a letter, and I guess there was no response at all. So he just lost his family because his two daughters are going to join her. You know, I know it's going to sound terrible what I'm saying, but I'm glad. I'm glad this is happening because it's about time. These Republicans that put these clowns in office pay a price because they never seem to do. They didn't pay a price when they put Bush had got us into all these wars. They buried their heads. My family is all Republican. We go through this struggle all the time. And the more he does it, the more they walk up the steps of a gallows. I just hope to God they're not going to drag us along with them, but apparently they are.
Yeah. Well,
He reminds me of that snake, the parable, that snake that he's talked about, the poem.
Right.
He is the head of the snake, and the Republican Party is the body. Once he destroys this entire country, and they start screaming, the Republicans, you know what he's going to tell them? He's going to say, "Shut up, you stupid people." He'll say it with a grin. "You knew damn well I was a snake when you put me in."
Yeah, there you go. And it's, it's a real thing, Donald, that Republicans are being hurt by Trump and Trump's policies, including this veteran. And yeah, it's a big story right now. It's also a real thing that a lot of the Republicans don't care. As long as they can stoke their hatred of gay people, of black people, of Hispanic people, of Jews. I mean, this is one of the things that the so-called alt-right all about, this anti-Semitism. As long as they can stoke that hatred, they're just fine with it. So, but Donald, I get your point. Thank you for the call. Remarkable. Anita in San Antonio. Hey, Anita, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, I wish you wouldn't use the term illegal Hispanic.
Yeah, I kind of winced when he said that, but I didn't want to interrupt him in midstream.
Yeah, but it's a racial slur, so maybe, yeah.
I don't think you realize that, though. I mean, there's no such thing as an illegal person. There are undocumented people, and it's yeah. But anyway, back to you.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you as far as Donald Trump and Putin talking about Iran. I doubt very seriously that Donald Trump understands the ramification or anything about what's going on with Iran. He doesn't. You're right. He doesn't have the intellect. I think that Putin probably sat there and talked the whole time, and Donald Trump just took orders. But what I really want to talk about was that pathetic display yesterday of his cabinet, his national intelligence people, who stood there and basically all said, "Oh yeah, we know, we do agree with the national intelligence findings," basically covering their own asses, and they would that would be on the record. But the truth is, we're leaderless, and that just proved it. When they're up there by themselves, almost like going around Donald Trump and making making sure everybody knows that they know what's really going on. And when Donald Trump just a few hours later is at that rally saying it's all a hoax.
Yeah.
I mean, we are leaderless. He is not. It's a dereliction of duty because he is not protecting the United States of America. That is his first job.
Anita, you and I are leaderless. The people who want somebody in the White House who will direct them, who will point to who they should hate or who they should fear, they are not leaderless. And the power and the foreign powers, whether it's foreign powers who want a war with Iran or whether it's foreign powers who want chaos in the American political system, those foreign powers are not leaderless. They have Donald Trump. But I think to the extent that average Americans are hoping to have a president who's fighting for them, that certainly is not happening right now.
But yes, he has that segment, and they follow him, and they will do whatever or believe anything he says. But the United States as a whole, as a government entity, is leaderless.
Yes, I agree. I absolutely agree.
That was my point. And he just, I just don't understand. They seem to be saying one thing. This happens all the time.
Yep.
And then he's saying something else.
Yep.
So what are we supposed to believe? Or what are other countries supposed to believe?
I think you're supposed to believe your lying eyes. You're supposed to believe what you're seeing and hearing, not what Donald Trump is saying. Anita, thank you. You raised this is the conundrum. Thank you very much for the call. As always, very clear. Chris in Chicago. Hey, Chris, you want to talk about global warming?
Oh, hi. Yeah. I was going to say, I think we had like 50 years to do something about global warming.
Yeah, there was a great piece in the New York Times yesterday or the day before about how the 1980s was the decade when, A, we figured out that global warming literally threatened the planet and threatened human civilization. B, you had fossil fuel companies willing to do something about it. C, you had both the Republican and Democratic parties willing to do something about it. And then D, we blew it.
Yeah, now, okay, let's say we take over Congress. Now, what's the guarantee us that the Democrats can do anything? Look at all, not only global warming, but guns. How can we get anything done? We had 8 years with Obama, nothing happened.
Well,
Obama was handcuffed.
Severely.
Yeah.
Very severely. But yeah, I mean, this is a real tough one. I mean, there's this whole. If we go back to the 80s, in this piece in the New York Times, I almost did a whole riff on it on the radio, and then it just, it seemed like it got too complex. But when Jimmy Carter was president, he came right out and said that we were having an energy crisis, right? We were having a crisis in the United States that we needed to do something about. And he actually proposed and passed legislation that did do something about it. And but the problem is that Ronald Reagan became president in 1981 as a result of the election in 1980, as a result of Reagan conspiring with the Iranians to hold, or Reagan's campaign conspiring with the Iranians to hold the hostages for an entire year during the campaign, and that just wiped out Jimmy Carter. But and I think that the reason why the movement to stop global warming, which was actually picking up steam in the 1970s, the reason it stopped was because Jimmy Carter gave this speech on July 15th, 1979, right, the year before the election year. This is right around this time in 1979. Jimmy Carter sat in the White House and said this to the American people. Sean, this is coming out of my computer if you've got it potted up. Jimmy Carter sat and said this to the American people.
The energy crisis is real. It is worldwide. It is a clear and present danger to our nation. These are facts, and we simply must face them. What I have to say to you now about energy is simple and vitally important. Point one, I am tonight setting a clear goal for the energy policy of the United States. Beginning this moment, this nation will never use more foreign oil than we did in 1977. Never.
And this was not considered controversial, but it flipped out the coast.
Moreover, I will soon submit legislation to Congress calling for the creation of this nation's first solar bank, which will help us achieve the crucial goal of 20% of our energy coming from solar power by the year 2000.
And it would have worked. It would have happened. And Reagan came into office and took Carter's solar panels off the roof of the White House and shut down these programs, and the Republicans rolled back Carter's legislation. And now we've got wildfires in California, dams bursting in Virginia, wildfires in Alaska. The entire planet right now, or at least the northern hemisphere, this is the summer. It was the southern hemisphere, during our winter. It was Australia on fire and Chile and Argentina on fire. Now it's us on fire. And this is the result of that change that was in part funded by fossil fuel billionaires and ExxonMobil and companies like ExxonMobil, Chris. So there's what happened with climate change.
Hey, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah, why doesn't the United Nations, the Secretary General, just have an emergency session? We're facing extinction here.
Yes.
Scientists condemn the United States, condemn Trump. You're killing the world.
I suspect they are, and I suspect that those kind of conversations are going on at the United Nations, although nobody is willing to go out. I mean, here's the problem. We carry something like 30% of the UN's budget, and we house the UN in New York City. So if Donald Trump were to go super hostile toward the UN, and keep in mind his Secretary of State, John Bolton, is the guy who said that you could blow the top 10 floors off the UN building and nobody would notice, right? You could destroy them. You could blow them up. You could pull a Tim McVeigh. That's our Secretary of State right now. So if I worked at the UN, or if I was the Secretary General or something like that, I would be very concerned about the possibility that Donald Trump could destroy the United Nations. And I mean, anything is possible, but this is, but the global warming thing, you want to know where we were on the right track, and where we got off that track was 1981 with the inauguration of Ronald Reagan. Chris, thanks for the call. And thanks for listening to Chicago's Progressive Talk. We'll be back. It's coming up on 15 minutes before the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And did you see Jim Acosta walk out of the press conference yesterday? I was waiting for all the other reporters to go with him. I was so disappointed that they didn't. And welcome back. Let's see here. Bill in Linwood, Washington. Hey, Bill, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind?
Wow, first in line. Good to talk to you, Mr. Hartmann.
Thank you, Bill. What's up?
Hey, I've got an excellent word exchange that is so cathartic and makes Donald Trump almost watchable.
Okay.
So every time Donald Trump says news, I just substitute the word hair. And then I can watch him.
In your internal dialogue. So Donald Trump is railing about the fake hair. I love it.
That's disgusting hair.
Yeah, it's a little NLP trick. You're changing your internal dialogue, which is what cognitive behavioral therapy, which came out of NLP, is all about. And that's great. Bill, thanks for the smile. That was a good one. I really like that. That was a very good one. Erwin in Missoula, Montana. Hey, Erwin, what's on your mind today?
Yes. I'm trying to visualize greenhouse gas emissions per capita in the United States and worldwide. I looked at all the newest government studies and whatnot. What I came up with is putting the CO2 into pounds and the volume into gallons, and specifically swimming pools, a 30,000-gallon swimming pool.
Okay.
Currently in the United States, per capita, greenhouse gas emissions is about 44,000 pounds of CO2. Now, that would be about 96 swimming pools.
Are you sure you're not mixing up pounds and gallons? There's 5.6 pounds to a gallon if it's gasoline. I don't know water, but I remember gasoline from when I was a pilot.
No, it would be the volume of the CO2 gas itself. CO2 gas.
Okay.
Is that 44,000 pounds of CO2 gas.
That's going to fill a lot more than a bunch of swimming pools.
Yeah, well, these are my numbers, and if
I mean, maybe it's compressed to a liquid, but
yeah, it as a gas it would be 90, filling. As a liquid, it would be much less, of course. Right. But as a gas, it would be more. But I guess the main thing is the 44,000 pounds. I'm sure that number is right.
Each one of us may weigh 100 or 200 pounds, but we're producing 44,000 pounds of carbon dioxide. Do you know what the number is on a per capita basis for Europe or China?
I'm not sure of that.
Or Japan?
Globally, for everyone, it's about 3,200 pounds. So
it's an order of magnitude, more than an order of magnitude greater.
14 times more, in the United States.
Wow.
So those are just numbers. I broke it down a lot more. I won't take up any more of your time, but I guess those were the main points I wanted to bring across.
Well, we do have a huge carbon footprint here in the United States. We drive big cars. We eat a lot of meat. And, when we consume a lot of products, many of which are manufactured in high carbon countries and shipped to us in high carbon vehicles, like giant ships and things. Erwin, thank you for the call. That's fascinating information. I appreciate you sharing it with us. We'll be right back. Oh, hi. I was just meditating, listening to the sounds of the ocean from this app, from my brainwaves that are being detected by the Muse headband. To find out more about it, check out choosemuse.com, code TOM. Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Superbeats. More information is available over at tomsbeets.com, THOMSBEETS.com, or by calling 800-568-9889. The new X chair, it's the X3, is just such a big upgrade from even the old X chair, which I think was one of the very best chairs, if not the best chair, office chair on the market. Check it out at xchairtom, T-H-O-M, xchairtom.com. Cameron Hughes travels the world looking for the finest wines and then bottles them in this lot way so that you can save an enormous amount of money. Last night, Louise and I had the 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was extraordinary. You can learn more at chwine.com/Tom.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And Rudy in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Rudy, what's on your mind today?
Hey, good day, John. Tom, how you doing?
I'm well. I hope you are too.
You know, I was driving. I'm a truck driver, and I was driving back out of Virginia last night, and I had a feeling upon me. But, you know, we so often speak about the politics of this country, but it's not the politics. It's the culture. If we go back to the culture of how this country was actually built, then we could start understanding why and where we at in this country.
Yeah, you're talking genocide and slavery, right?
That's right, and we can start seeing and connecting the dots as to why this country is heading down this dark hole as we see it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this country was founded on white supremacy. It was founded on the idea that basically white people were the only real humans.
That's right, and it's built on it's built on hatred.
Yep.
So when you're talking about what's happening in this country, you're talking about people that are conscientious stupidity that are leading sincere ignorant people.
This is why, Rudy, it was so, inappropriate. I'm missing an adjective here, but it was so wrong that the Koch brothers decided to fund the Tea Party when this little racist Tea Party erupted, who were upset about, a government program that would help, all home buyers whose mortgages were underwater. But the Tea Party was specifically upset about black homeowners and Hispanic homeowners whose mortgages were underwater. And the Koch brothers decided to fund that through Americans for Prosperity, their big gun. And that brought the Republican Party back. I mean, the Tea Party took the House and the Senate in 2010. And Donald Trump walked in 2016. He picked, as Mark Sumner writes, he took the keys to the engine that they built, the car that they built, and just drove it away. And now they're standing there going, what happened?
Yeah.
It could have been predictable.
It's the culture of this country. And that is scary because we're talking about people that really wouldn't mind just almost suicidal people. I mean, people that just, it's so much hatred and ignorance that they would do the wrong just to prove their point.
Yeah.
And it's the most disgusting thing that because when you're talking to these people, it's like it's a script right in front of them, right off of Fox News, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, are you really saying this to me?
Yeah.
And then when they discover that you understand what they're saying, then you try to correct them. Then they just it's almost like, hey, this guy, it's the weirdest look that they have, and then they just run off or they start to get loud, and it's almost a freakish like situation, and it's the culture.
Yeah.
And in this country, I don't know. When I saw President Trump in front of those VFW guys, the first thing came to my mind was, I wonder how many of those old white men actually saw black people being lynched or burnt. But see, this is deep-seated hatred, Tom. These people were not. They don't care. I saw this look in this guy's in this guy's eyes, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I get it, Rudy, and this is where this strain of white supremacy, white identity politics has always been this extremely powerful thing, this extremely powerful political tool that politicians have used very carefully, very gingerly, very gently, shall we say. Perhaps not quite so much, but when Richard Nixon talked about the war on drugs and law and order, everybody knew that he was talking about the cities that were burning, the riots of the 60s, which were the black parts of the cities. When George Herbert Walker Bush, when Paul Manafort's company, Lee Atwater actually designed it, but he worked for Paul Manafort at the time. When Paul Manafort's company rolled out the Willie Horton ad for George Herbert Walker Bush, that was using that white supremacy, that white identity politics to scare people into voting for Bush, and it actually worked. It hurt Dukakis terribly, and Republicans have been using this, and Democrats used to use it prior to the 60s. I mean, George Wallace and all these other, the Dixiecrats. I mean, this was their thing, but it was largely confined to the South, and it went national with the Manafort-Atwater political team working for Richard Nixon, working for Ronald Reagan, and working for George Herbert Walker Bush. And they just nationalized this thing, and then it kind of went quiet for a while. During the George W. Bush presidency, he actually had black people in his cabinet and Hispanics, and he had a Hispanic attorney general. So it kind of went down a little bit during Bush's presidency, and then Obama becomes president, and boom, it comes out of the woodwork. I mean, all these freaked out white people and white identity politics becomes a thing, and Rush Limbaugh grabs hold of it, and Sean Hannity grabs hold of it, and all these guys grab hold of it, and then the Koch brothers took this Tea Party, this white uprising against a government program to bail out black and Hispanic people whose homes were underwater. And it wasn't just black and Hispanic people, but that's how it was characterized on the right-wing media. They took that and weaponized it, the Koch brothers did, with Americans for Prosperity, this thing called the Tea Party, and turned it into a political movement and got people elected to Congress based on it, and that opened the door to Donald Trump, and that's how we got where we are right now, Rudy. What do you think of that analysis? Rudy?
As usual. I mean, yes. Yeah, you're right on point as usual, Tom. It's a scary feeling. The future is scary right now because we're teetering. We're on the edge. We're on the edge of really slipping into a deep depression, something real deep, something I don't know if we can return from.
I have no doubt that we can return from it. I mean, I'm just concerned about how much damage will be done by it. But I share your concern. I think that the ideals of democracy are something that are hard-coded into human DNA. Most animal species, most mammals live democratically. I think that historically humans have too. Rudy, thank you for the call. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Oh, hi. I was just meditating, listening to the sounds of the ocean from this app, from my brainwaves that are being detected by the Muse headband. To find out more about it, check out choosemuse.com, code TOM. Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Superbeats. More information is available over at tomsbeets.com, THOMSBEETS.com, or by calling 800-568-9889. The new X chair, it's the X3, is just such a big upgrade from the even the old X chair, which I think was one of the very best chairs, if not the best chair, office chair on the market. Check it out at xchairtom, T-H-O-M, xchairtom.com. Cameron Hughes travels the world looking for the finest wines and then bottles them in this lot way so that you can save an enormous amount of money. Last night, Louise and I had the 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was extraordinary. You can learn more at chwine.com/Tom. Welcome to the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Settlers, the Mythology of the White Proletariat, the True Story of the White Nation by J. Sakai, published by Morningstar Press in 1989. This is from Chapter 2, The Foundations of Settler Life. The life of European settlers and the class structure of their society was abnormal because it was dependent upon a foundation of conquest, genocide, and enslavement. The myth of the self-sufficient white settler family clearing the wilderness and supporting themselves through their own initiative and hard labor is a propaganda fabrication. It is the absolute characteristic of settler society to be parasitic, dependent upon the super-exploitation of oppressed peoples for its style of life. Never has Euro-American society completely supported itself. This is the decisive factor in the consciousness of all classes and strata of white society from 1600 to now. Settler society was raised up above the level of backward old Europe by a foundation of conquest. This conquest was a miracle drug for a Europe convulsed with the reaction of decaying feudalism and deadly capitalism. Shot into the veins of the Spanish feudal nation, for instance, the miracle drug of the New World conquest gave Spain the momentary power to overrun North Africa, Holland, and Italy before her historical incident waned. Like many such fixes for Euro-Americans, this conquest was addicting. It was habit-forming and rapidly indispensable, not only culturally, but in the mechanism of an oppressor society whose lifeblood was new conquest. We'll examine this later in the relationship of settlerism to imperialism. For now, it's enough to see that this conquest is a material act of great magnitude, an economic and social event as important as the emergence of the factory system or the exploitation of petroleum in the Middle East. We stress the obvious here because the Euro-American settlers have always made light of their invasion and occupation, although the conquered territory is the precondition for their whole society. Traditionally, European settler societies throw off the propaganda smoke screens that they didn't really conquer and dispossess other nations. They claim with false modesty that they merely moved into vacant territory. So the early English settlers depicted America as empty, a howling wilderness, unsettled, sparsely populated, just waiting with a vacant sign on the door for the first lucky civilization to walk in and claim it. Theodore Roosevelt wrote defensively in 1900, quote, "The settler and pioneer have at bottom had justice on their side. This great continent could not have been kept as nothing but a game preserve for squalid savages," end of quote. It is telling that this lie is precisely the same lie put forward by white Afrikaner settlers who claim that South Africa was literally totally uninhabited by any Africans when they arrived from Europe. To universal derision, these European settlers claim to be the only rightful historic inhabitants of South Africa. Or we can hear similar defenses put forward by the European settlers of Israel, who claim that much of the Palestinian land and buildings they occupy are rightfully theirs, since the Arabs had allegedly decided to voluntarily abandon it all during the 1948-49 war. Are these kinds of tales any less preposterous than those put forward by Euro-American settlers? America was spacious and sparsely populated only because the European invaders destroyed whole civilizations and killed off millions of Native Americans to get the land and profits they wanted. We all know that when the English arrived at Virginia, for example, they encountered an urban, village-dwelling society far more skilled than they were in the arts of medicine, agriculture, fishing, and government. This civilization was reflected in a chain of 300 Indian nations and peoples stretching from the Arctic Circle to the tip of South America, many of whom had highly developed societies. There was, in fact, a greater population in these Indian nations in 1492 than in all of Western Europe. Recent scholarly estimates indicate that at the time of Columbus, there were 100 million Indians in the hemisphere, 10 million in North America, 25 million in central Mexico, and an additional 65 million elsewhere in Central and South America. These numbers have long been concealed since they give rise to the logical question of what happened to this great mass of people. The European invaders, Spanish, Dutch, English, Portuguese, and French, simply killed off millions and millions to safeguard their conquest of the land and provide the disposable slave labor they needed to launch their new world. Conservative Western historical estimates show that the Spanish reduced, in quotes, the Indian population of their colonies from some 50 million to only 4 million by the end of the 17th century. And from the 10 million Indians who once inhabited North America, after 4 centuries of settler invasion and rule, there were in 1900 perhaps 200,000 to 300,000 surviving descendants in the United States. This was the very substantial down payment towards the continuing blood price that third world nations have to pay to sustain the Euro-American way of life. So when we hear that the settlers pushed out the Indians or forced the Indians to leave their traditional hunting grounds, we know that these are just code phrases to refer politely to the most barbaric genocide imaginable. It could well be the greatest crime in all of human history. Only here, the Adolf Eichmanns and Heinrich Himmlers had names like Benjamin Franklin and Andrew Jackson. The point is that genocide was not an accident, not an excess, not the unintended side effect of virile European growth. Genocide was the necessary and deliberate act of the capitalists and their settler shock troops. The book Settlers.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. It's Anything Goes Friday here, TGIF, Shabbat Shalom, Juma Mubarak, whatever it may be for you. Hope you have a great weekend. We've been talking about, what happens when the fascists turn violent and where this all started. And I'd like to step you into the Wayback Machine and go back to 2008. Mitt Romney is running against Barack Obama. And that racist strain that I mentioned in the last hour, that has been with us since the founding of this republic. I mean, our country was founded in the genocide of Native Americans and the enslavement of Africans. That racism has been only very delicately, carefully used historically by white politicians. Sometimes very blatantly, obviously, cross burnings and lynchings and all that kind of stuff down in the South largely, although it had happened all over the United States. But in the last 100 years, well, the last 50 years anyway or so, it had been a little, politicians have been a little more careful about using it until the era, I think, of right-wing hate radio. And so here we are in 2008 as Obama is running against Romney, and we hear this. Excuse me, let me cue it up.
Obama's campaign wants to turn Mitt Romney into the candidate of old, straight, white men. So does that mean you should vote for Obama because he's a young, black, gay man? Well, I'm asking, what does this mean?
Right. Is that even the conversation to have, Rush? I mean, really? And this is where we're, Yanis Boutaris. You don't know who Yanis Boutaris is by all, in all probability, unless you're a fan of Greek politics. He's the mayor of Thessaloniki, which is the second largest city in Greece. And he's 76 years old. He's been dry for 27 years. He's an ex-alcoholic. In his 7 years as mayor, he has championed pride parades in that northern coastal city, initiated plans for a Holocaust Memorial Museum, and expanded tourism from Turkey, Israel, and the Balkans. And there was a protest a few months ago, a number of them. This was on January 21st in Thessaloniki. And quoting this piece by Patrick Strickland in the New Republic, newrepublic.com, it's titled, When Fascists Turn Violent. Some far-right participants distributed flyers dubbing Boutaris a slave of the Jews. And others attacked a pair of anarchist squats, anarchist encampments. The anarchists are the lefties, right? Setting one ablaze. By the time the squares and streets emptied, unknown assailants had defaced the Holocaust Museum, or the monument, excuse me, in the city center. They left behind the logo of the neo-fascist Golden Dawn Party, which first entered Parliament in 2013. And then they tell this very specific story about this recent protest, shall we say, that emerged when Boutaras, the liberal mayor, showed up. And we need to take this stuff seriously. This is happening in Greece right now. It could be happening in any city in America, in my opinion, or we're on the edge of it, could be happening. Boutaras wasn't fearful when the shouts first started, writes Patrick Strickland, but the hostility swelled. The moment lingered, pregnant with tension, until someone in the back of the crowd shouted, "Let's go!" Within seconds, the mayor was encircled by frantic young men who shoved him and spat at him. Bottles flew in his direction. A punch came, and then another. This 76-year-old man being beaten up by the crowd. As his small entourage gripped him by his raw-boned arms and guided him toward the car as the mob lashed out at them, several punches landing on City Council President Gula as well. The attackers followed, some sprinting from the back to catch up. A tall, limber young man dressed in black, skin-tight Everlast shirt and matching athletic shorts delivered a series of powerful kicks to the mayor's chest. Boutaras lost his balance and tumbled to the ground, the crowd kicking him. The guards got him back up. Finally, they reached the car, Gula prying open the passenger side door. Boutaras slid in, and the car sped away as a final string of strikes burst the rear window into a shatter of jagged shards. They smashed the rear window of his car as he was driving away. Gula stayed behind. The mob's anger was gone, and in its place was deafening applause. The thing that unites fascists is hatred. Hate black people, hate gay people, hate Hispanic people, hate women, hate liberals, libtards, progressives. Hatred. And that's what the Koch started paying for, started funding in 2009 when Barack Obama became president and the first Tea Party emerged. And they decided, hey, let's go in on this. And now you've got, for example, Jim Jordan, Tea Party. He ran as a Tea Partier. He is in the House of Representatives as a Tea Partier. And he now wants to become the Speaker of the House of Representatives. This is how powerful, how after 40 years of trying to get control of the Republican Party in the United States, with some success for the Republican Party, but failing with regard to control of the United States. I mean, Barack Obama won in 2008, big, took the House and the Senate too. The Kochs decided, oh, let's just support this little Tea Party thing where they hate this black guy. You know, after all, he's a gay man and he's a secret Muslim and he wasn't born in the United States. You know, I'm not sure that the Kochs were funding specifically that, but that was the rhetoric that was coming out of these Tea Party meetings that we all watched on TV and laughed at and said, oh, those silly people with their tea bags hanging from their tri-cornered hats, talking about how Obama was an illegitimate president. Because after all, it's called the White House for a reason. And you know, the media and all the rest of us just, oh, it's just kind of funny. Right. Anyhow, back to your calls. It's Anything Goes Friday. Maine, hey Maine, you're on line 8. The guy who called at the end of the last hour was on line 7, and I look down from time to time to remind myself the name of my caller, and I think I called him Maine at one point. My apologies, but you're on the air with us. What's up?
Oh, how you doing, Tom?
I'm well.
Yeah, all right.
I hope you are too.
I wanted to talk about reparations. About 10 days or so ago, you talked about reparations and marginalization. And I wanted to speak about how when Clinton came into office, one of the first things he did in about the first 10 days or so that he came into office, he said that American blacks could get reparations for the days of slavery, even though the government condoned slavery during the days of colonialism and statehood.
Right, you're talking 1993. Yeah, I remember the debate.
Yeah, and because it was so early in his first term, the people and forgot, I guess, by the second term, because no one brought it up that he had, restricted the government for being able to give blacks some type of reparations for slavery, even though he helped the European Jews get their money from the Swiss banks that Hitler had put in during World War II.
You're right.
And then, and then there was the American Indian. They gave them some type of reparations by allowing some of the reservations to have casinos on them, and even during World War II, after World War II, they gave some type of reparations to the American Japanese who they incarcerated during World War II.
Yeah, it took a while for that to happen, but the reason why Clinton backed away from that in '93, Maine, and I'm sure you know this, is because it would have triggered the white identity politics. It would have triggered the Limbaughs of the world, and all these people who you will see out on the streets this weekend, basically, running on white identity politics, and Clinton and the Democratic Party, sadly, were afraid of that.
Well, this is what we have to. We as Democrats or progressives, we have to democratize capitalism, because it's capitalism that's all behind this, and it's like the Koch brothers are part of this capitalism. We have to demand our democratic rights, like they demand their capitalistic rights in privatization.
I agree.
We have to, like as you say, demand the commons to be democratic for all people, and not just a certain few.
Yep, very well said, Maine. And I think that we need to have a good conversation in this country about reparations. I really do. We've had that conversation on the show a number of times, but we're not finding politicians who are willing to go near it, unfortunately. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
16 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where smart people get their news. And welcome back. Pat in Greeley, Colorado. Hey, Pat, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind?
Hi, I'm so glad to have this opportunity to talk about Initiative 97 to put on the ballot. We only have a few more days to collect it. It's collected in Colorado. It's to put 2,500 feet for new drilling operations away from the homes and schools. And it's being fought aggressively by the oil and gas industry. They've harassed people who are doing petitions. They bought out companies that have been that have been contracted to do paid petitioners. They paid them more, and we only have a few more days to collect. So this is the final days of it, and you can find out where to sign on CORising.org. It tells about the petition and where to sign for, how to sign it, details about the petition. But I know we've had a lot of they've had a number where oil and gas people could call, tell where people are collecting that signs, and they'd send out a group to harass those people and tell people not to sign and that kind of thing.
That indicates that they know that popular opinion is not on their side.
Yes,
that they'll lose
it's a good and bad thing, because they are afraid of it.
Yeah.
But thank you for this opportunity, and again, it's CORising.org.
CORising, as in Colorado, rising.org. Thank you, Pat. I wish you the very best of luck. Let us know if it works out. Thank you very much for the call.
Thank you.
Yeah, good talking to you. Jesse in Lake County, California. Hey, Jesse, what's up?
Hi there. Fire and oil. Lake County is on fire.
Is that the county you live in?
Yes, again. The county seat, Lakeport, has been evacuated. All the communities have been evacuated. It's just a little and a poor county. It's only 64,000 people in the whole county.
Wow.
2 years ago, I lost everything. In Middletown, 80% of the town burned down. And now, today, the rest of it is burning down.
Oh, my.
It's Blue Lakes, Upper Lake, Nice, Lakeport, Winter Springs, Bachelor Valley, Scotts Valley, Saratoga Springs. It's all evacuating. And it's my son today is very busy. He works in a tire shop, the kind that specializes in large truck tires.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very busy today down in the casino in Middletown, where he's helping the firefighters replace tires on their fire trucks.
Mm.
And it's all, I'm grieving so bad. To what? It's a beautiful little county, a natural wonder in many ways. And nature is burning up because the oil boys, the oil boys.
Yeah.
Putin, richest man in the world because oil.
Yeah.
And this is, we're losing everything, people, and you can look at Lake County and see your future if this doesn't quit, if it's not too late, which I kind of believe it is.
I don't think it's too late, Jesse, but we're right on the edge. Jesse, thank you so much for the call. I'm so sorry to hear about all the pain you're experiencing, and thank you for the cautionary note. I really appreciate your call. Thank you. We'll be back. Oh, hi. I was just meditating, listening to the sounds of the ocean from this app, from my brainwaves that are being detected by the Muse headband. To find out more about it, check out choosemuse.com, code TOM. The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Superbeats. More information is available over at tomsbeets.com, THOMSBEETS.com, or by calling 800-568-9889. The new X chair, it's the X3, is just such a big upgrade from even the old X chair, which I think was one of the very best chairs, if not the best office chair on the market. Check it out at xchairtom, T-H-O-M, xchairtom.com. Cameron Hughes travels the world looking for the finest wines and then bottles them in this lot way so that you can save an enormous amount of money. Last night, Louise and I had the 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was extraordinary. You can learn more at chwine.com/Tom.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find
in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Hey, Abe, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. I'm a little nervous. I've been watching the news a little bit the last few days, and a thought occurred to me that I thought I would run by you. I don't like making predictions, so I'm not going to say it's a prediction, but the Republicans have been saying that Russia did meddle and will meddle in November, and I even found a quote from July 24th that Trump said so. Yesterday, Dan Coates admitted that meddling by the Russians will occur in November, and I got to thinking, how can they be saying this? And I think possibly we're being set up, and I say that because they're worried about November, the blue wave. For a while there, Trump was saying, well, oh, there's a red wave coming. I don't think that's going to fly.
Yeah.
So I think we're possibly being set up for when the blue wave hits, the Republican response is going to be, Russia did it. This is due to Russian meddling. And I wanted your thoughts on that.
I think you're right. Donald Trump traffics in phony conspiracy theories, and phony conspiracy theories typically have a grain of truth, which makes them sufficiently credible that they become viral. They become transmissible. And I think you're absolutely right. I think if the Democrats win, that suddenly Donald Trump is going to have a change of heart, and he's going to say, oh yeah, I guess the Russians are meddling with the election. And but the thing that I'm seeing that's the very biggest interference in our election is not coming from Russia, although I acknowledge that the Russians have been, or at least the Internet Research Bureau, which is in Russia, has been placing all these ads, and probably funded by the Russian government, been placing all these ads on Facebook and stuff like that. But the big thing that concerns me is, for example, Brian Kemp, the guy who's the Republican who's running for governor of Georgia against Stacey Abrams. He was Secretary of State, and last year he removed 591,300 names from the voter rolls in Georgia. And it looks like the majority of those people were people of color. And, you know, if you purge 500,000 people from the voting rolls of your state, and keep in mind, Jeb Bush only had to purge 80,000 people from the voting rolls of Florida in order to get George within shooting range, you know, close enough that the Supreme Court could seal the election for him. I think that this voter suppression effort that is being done by pushing people off the voting rolls is the big thing. And of course, they're not going to point to that and say this is how, you know, we won where Republicans won. But I'm not confident that the blue wave is coming because of that voter suppression effort. And I think that's why you're seeing this schizophrenia in the Republican Party. You got some Republicans who are genuinely concerned about what Russia is doing. You've got other Republicans who don't want to talk about it because they think that Russia helped them win the election. And I think Donald Trump is at the top of that list. And then you've got others who are trying to figure out how to play it for a political angle, which is what you're talking about, Abe. And I think all those things can all exist at the same time. Abe, thanks for the call. Good point. Adam in New Orleans. Hey, Adam. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Hey, Tom. I've been trying to understand our increased bellicosity towards Iran, NATO, China. Looking at the U.S.'s military positioning, how the Trump administration is resetting alliances. In other words, trying to take emotion out of it. It appears that we're preparing for real and asymmetrical warfare against China by attacking Iran, a key source of China's oil. So echoing your position, it's all about the money. We seem to be queuing up for World War III seriously.
Right.
I mean, do you have some other read on this?
No, I don't. Sean, what was the name of the guy who made that movie that we played a year and a half ago? We played a clip from it here on the program, and he came on. The title of the movie was The Coming War with China. He was a British reporter, and he produced this movie.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't.
We can't remember his name. Sean can't remember it either. But he made this movie that I watched. Louise and I watched it, and it's absolutely shocking. We have over 100 military bases basically encircling China. And say that again. Pilger, John Pilger. That's right, John Pilger, Pilger. You can Google the movie. I'm guessing it's probably out there now and on YouTube or whatever. And it was called The Coming War with China. And it makes the point that you're making, and it makes it really, really well. And I think it's something that we need to take very seriously is, are we preparing for a war with China? Is this the last gasp of American empire? Is this because China has largely displaced America as the manufacturing center of the world. And that's not a good position to be in. And when empires start to disintegrate and lose their power, sometimes they reform into nice little countries like the UK did, and sometimes they lash out. Adam, thanks for the call.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with more of your calls. Anything Goes Friday right after this. For our book club today, we're reading Out of the Wreckage, A New Politics for an Age of Crisis by George Monbiot. This is from Chapter 3, Don't Look Back. The political history of the second half of the 20th century could be summarized as the conflict between its two great narratives, neoliberalism and social democracy. Social democracy in this era, whose story I briefly summarized in Chapter 1, acquired much of its power and coherence from the thinking of one remarkable man. Across 4 decades, John Maynard Keynes's work dominated economic thought and practice. During the period the French called the Trente Glorieuses, 1945 to 1975, his prescriptions are widely credited with reviving economies and distributing their benefits. That they remain more or less the only mainstream alternative to neoliberalism today reveals a remarkable stagnation of both thought and ambition. The first and most obvious problem with an attempt to use Keynesian social democracy as a core political narrative is that is that the story is more than 80 years old. Political stories need to be renewed. If politics does not feel fresh, it struggles to kindle the imaginative excitement from which hope arises. The second problem is that the surviving enthusiasm for Keynes among mainstream parties is highly selective. It has been reduced in most cases to lowering interest rates when economies are sluggish and engaging in tepid counter-cyclical public spending, which means injecting public money into the economy when unemployment is high or recession threatens. Other Keynesian measures, such as raising taxes when an economy grows quickly to dampen the boom-bust cycle, the fixed exchange rate system, capital controls, and a self-balancing global banking system, an international clearing union, all of which Keynes saw as essential complements to these policies, have been discarded and forgotten. Not only does this ensure that the rich old story has been reduced to two thin chapters, whose loss of context destroys their narrative power, but the absence of other Keynesian measures, as well as changed global circumstances, weakens the effectiveness of the remaining elements of policy. Let me give you an example. In 2009, in the hope of boosting the economy in the wake of the financial crash, the British government spent £300 million on stimulating sales of new cars. Under its scrappage scheme, if car owners traded in their old vehicles for new ones, the government, with the help of manufacturers, knocked £2,000 off the price. This lavish program was partly justified as an environmental measure, though it was clear from the outset that it would lead to a rise in environmental impacts as the materials and energies used in manufacturing new cars outweigh any likely savings from better fuel economy. Its primary purpose was to boost British car assembly plants and protect the jobs of their workers. But European state aid rules forbade such schemes from discriminating between cars made in Britain and cars made abroad. British car parts assembled only some 15% of the vehicles sold in that country, which meant that 85% of the benefit went to car plants in Germany, Japan, and other manufacturing nations. We could see this spending as foreign aid to some of the world's richest nations. The current pattern of globalization, which developed partly as a result of abandoning the fixed exchange rates and capital controls that Keynes advocated, ensures that this problem is to some extent repeated wherever Keynesian stimulus spending is applied. It might lead to a general, if scarcely detectable, global economic uplift, but the domestic impact will necessarily be weaker than Keynes intended. This issue is compounded by the phenomena of job-free growth, caused in part by the automation now spreading into almost every economic sector. Today, governments pull the starter cord, spending public money and cutting interest rates, that ignited the economy and employment in the past, only to discover that it snaps before the motor fires. Two feeble measures, removed from the rich framework of thought and narrative in which they were once embedded, have little chance of sustaining a political revival. Another issue is that the troubles that beset the Keynesian model in the 1970s have not disappeared. While the oil embargo of '73 was the immediate trigger for the lethal combination of high inflation and high unemployment, called stagflation back then, that Keynesian policies were almost powerless to counteract. Problems with the system had been mounting for years. Falling productivity and rising costs push inflation, wages and prices pursuing each other upwards, were already beginning to erode support for Keynesian economics. Most importantly, perhaps, the program had buckled in response to the political demands of capital. Strong financial regulations and controls on the movement of money began to weaken in the 1950s as governments started to liberalize financial markets. Richard Nixon's decision in '71 to suspend the convertibility of dollars into gold destroyed the system of fixed exchange rates on which much of the success of Keynes's policies depended. The capital controls introduced to prevent financiers and speculators from sucking money out of balanced Keynesian economies collapsed. Today, it's hard to find a mainstream politician in Europe or the Anglophone nations, including those who call themselves Keynesians, prepared to call for their reintroduction. We cannot hope that the strategies deployed by global finance that helped to destroy the efficacy of Keynes's measures in the '70s will be unlearned. If the soft Keynesianism proposed by opponents of neoliberalism is to amount to anything but tinkering, it has to confront a wider set of challenges than most of its advocates have yet been prepared to acknowledge. But perhaps the biggest problem residual Keynesianism confronts in the 21st century is that when it does work, it collides headfirst with the environmental crisis. The book, Out of the Wreckage by George Monbiot.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Sincere Media Support Group for We the People, the Thom Hartmann Program. And Ken in Palatine, Illinois. Hey, Ken, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Tom. This is regarding an editorial in the Chicago Sun-Times from back on July 9th. Literacy for all children is a fundamental right in a democracy, and I'm a retired teacher, so this subject is very important to me. But quoting from the article, a federal judge in Michigan ruled on June 30th that children do not have a fundamental right to learn to read and write, no matter how important literacy is to making one's way in life. This is an outrage.
Wow.
And then he says plainly, the article says, plainly literacy and the opportunity to obtain it is of incalculable importance. U.S. District Judge Stephen Murphy III wrote in a 40-page opinion, as plaintiffs point out, voting, participating, meaningful, and civic life, and accessing justice requires some measure of literacy. But those arguments, he continued, do not necessarily make access to literacy a fundamental right. Now, in teacher training, one thing I had to take a course in historical foundations of education, and one thing that you find out is that the schools were set up not entirely to be nice to our citizens, although that's a good thing, but primarily to hold the country together. We need to be literate. This just blows my mind.
Well, here's the problem. And you've identified a big one, Ken. We look at, for example, I'm writing a book right now about Supreme Court decisions over the last 200 years. And the Supreme Court constantly is deciding on the side of property and wealth as opposed to the side of humanity and the environment. And there's a simple reason why that is. The Supreme Court is simply interpreting the Constitution. And when the Constitution was written, there was a debate about extending rights as part of the general welfare provisions of the Constitution, clearly establishing rights to things like literacy, rights to things like housing, there was even a discussion about rights to things like employment. Thomas Paine was gung-ho for this, although he was not there for the Constitutional Convention. And the problem was that the slave states were like, well, wait a minute, if you establish those rights, then we're going to have pressure to extend those rights to the slaves that we have. And so they left all that stuff out of the Constitution. And in fact, the only right that is clearly established in the Constitution at the individual level is the right of private property. And in part, that was because private property was a euphemism in the South for slaves. They represented the single largest store of wealth in the South, greater than even the land or the houses. And for the North, they represented the single largest source of income. New York City was making a fortune on the slave trade and on the cotton trade. And in fact, when the South seceded, before the bombing of Fort Sumter, when the South seceded, the mayor of New York issued a proclamation that New York should secede with the South because so much of the money that New York City made, the Wall Street made, came from slavery and cotton. So we've got a Constitution that focuses on one thing and one thing only, which is the right of commerce and property. The Commerce Clause is the largest piece of this. And that has been the focus of virtually every major and consequential Supreme Court decision over the last 200 years. Not every, but the vast majority of them. And we need to amend the Constitution to say that the rights of humanity and the rights of the environment are greater than the rights of property and property holders. And until we do that, we're going to have the same kind of issue that you're talking about, Ken, because once you establish the right of humanity as being greater than the right of property, and this is why the right-wingers are so freaked out about this, then you can, at law, without it being struck down by the Supreme Court, say, therefore, it is entirely legitimate to take money away from very, very rich people in the form of taxes and give that money to little kids in the form of education. And the right is like, oh my God, that's socialism, we can't have that. And the reason why there isn't a right to education in the United States is exactly what I just laid out. So Ken, we need to not only amend the Constitution to say money is not speech and corporations aren't people, but we need to amend the Constitution to say that humanity and the environment, humans and the environment, have higher rights than the rights of property and commerce. And that is simply not the way the Constitution reads right now. Ken, thanks for the call. It's a great, you may think this is a snoozer topic. It is not. This is the key, the core of absolutely everything. Gary in Edwardsville, Illinois. Hey, Gary, what's on your mind today?
Oh, yeah, Tom, it's great talking to you. I respect your extreme knowledge. just on Facebook the other day, and I had two of these Republican nuts. I said we should spend less on war, more on bridges and utility grids, and and they said, well, that's socialism. The Constitution doesn't give you the right to do that. Well,
really? Article 1, Section 8 specifically gives Congress the power to raise taxes to build roads.
That's exactly, provide for the common defense and provide for the general welfare.
Right, promote the general welfare.
I think that's pretty inclusive. I mean, it's like, but anyway, these Republican nut jobs said Amendment 8 says if you don't give the power to the Fed, then it goes to the state, and the power wasn't given to the Fed.
Yeah, that's the 10th Amendment, actually, but yeah.
But I don't know where they get this, Tom. I mean, where you're more knowledgeable than me.
It comes out of right-wing think tanks, Gary, who are funded by billionaires and who are devoted to causing average people to think that whatever works best for the billionaires will work best for them.
Well, this seems to be mainstream Republican thought because
yes, it is.
I got two of them, bam, bam, right there after I made a post, in favor of less wars and more roads and bridges. I got two of those, just bam, bam, just like.
Well,
that.
it might have been actually, it might have been deluded Republicans, or it might have been people who are paid by one of these think tanks who are promoting these ideas, and they do have paid trolls, and they are out there. Or it might have been Russians, for God's sake. Who knows? Gary.
One of them was listed as a friend, I immediately defriended because he kept nagging and nagging and nagging and nagging, and I finally decided, I said, well, it'll take 10 years to convince you, and it's not worth it.
Was it actually somebody you knew or somebody that you just met online?
It was a friend listed as family member friend, I believe, and one that I'm not really that familiar with. But,
yeah, because the ones you're not familiar with, they might be trolls. I mean, they may be people who are paid for by a foreign government or by a right-wing think tank. But
what I'm saying, Tom, is they seemed almost certain that the federal government was not given this power to make roads and bridges and utility grids. And
right, they're wrong.
So where are they getting it? I mean, my question to you, you're more knowledgeable than me.
It is this entire strain of libertarianism was pumped up into the public dialogue in a big way in 1980 when David Koch ran for vice president of the United States on the libertarian ticket. And
they seem to get their stuff from they were vehement about getting it from the Constitution.
Yeah,
that's what kind of.
Well, this is their sales pitch, is the Constitution. But let me just read to you this is the David Koch running for president of the United States or vice president of the United States on this platform, and you can find this over on Bernie Sanders' website. But this is the Libertarian Party platform that David Koch ran on. We urge the repeal of federal campaign, and their argument is that all of these things are unconstitutional. We urge the repeal of federal campaign finance laws and the immediate abolition of the despotic Federal Elections Commission. We favor the abolition of Medicare and Medicaid programs. We oppose any compulsory insurance or tax-supported plan to provide health services. We also favor the deregulation of the medical insurance industry. We favor the repeal of the fraudulent, virtually bankrupt, and increasingly, keep in mind, this is 1980, increasingly oppressive Social Security system. We propose the abolition of the government post office. Pending abolition, we call for an end to the monopoly system and allowing free competition. We oppose all personal and corporate income taxation, including capital gains taxes. We support the eventual repeal of all taxation. We support, as an interim measure, all criminal and civil sanctions against tax evasion should be terminated immediately. We support repeal of all law which impedes the ability of any person to find employment, such as minimum wage laws. We advocate the complete separation of education and state. Government schools lead to the indoctrination of children and interfere with the free choice of individuals. Government ownership, operation, regulation, and subsidy of schools and colleges should be ended. We condemn compulsory education laws, and we call for the immediate repeal of such laws. We support the repeal of all taxes on the income or property of private schools. We support the abolition of the Environmental Protection Agency. We support the abolition of the Department of Energy. We call for the dissolution of all government agencies concerned with transportation, including the Department of Transportation. We demand the return of America's railroad system to private ownership. We call for the privatization of all public roads and the national highway system. We specifically oppose laws requiring an individual to buy or use so-called self-protection equipment, such as safety belts, airbags, or crash helmets. We advocate the abolition of the Food and Drug Administration. We support an end to all subsidies for childbearing built into our present laws, including all welfare plans and the provision of tax-supported services for children. We oppose all government welfare, relief projects, and aid to the poor programs. The proper source of help for such persons is the voluntary efforts of private groups and individuals. We call for the privatization of our inland waterways, like the Mississippi River, and of the distribution system that brings water to industry, agriculture, and households. We call for the repeal of the Occupational Safety and Health Act. We call for the abolition of the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and we support the repeal of all state usury laws. Those are laws that make it illegal to charge excessive interest. So that's when the seeds were planted in our body politic in a big way, Gary. That was when Ayn Rand went mainstream. That's when what had always been considered the crazies. In 1956, Dwight Eisenhower's brother wrote him a letter saying that, America had all these problems and whatnot. And Dwight said, well, there's these crazy guys down in Texas who think that you can end Social Security, but their number is small and they are stupid. Well, that number got bigger in 1980, and it now runs the Republican Party today. Gary, I got to run, but thank you for the break. Thank you for the call. I'm sorry we're hitting the break here. Yeah, we're going to be checking in with Talk Media News in just a minute. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with Talk Media News in 4 minutes. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, helping you win the water cooler wars. And welcome back. Hobart in Burlington, Mississippi. Hey, Hobart, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
You mentioned the UN earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the UN is what most liberals think it is. It grew out of the Council on Foreign Relations, which...
no, it did not. It grew out of the League of Nations.
Well, the League of Nations...
Woodrow Wilson was unsuccessful in fully getting funded and approved.
Well, the Council on Foreign Relations was instrumental, and the Council on Foreign Relations was founded in 1921 by the interests of the late John Pierpont Morgan, hardly an arch-liberal.
Right.
And they aren't on your side, no matter how it appears. They're looking out for the billionaires. They were
Hobart, other than the DNA of its genesis, and I think that would be probably disputed by most. Certainly, Dag Hammarskjöld didn't share your opinion. By the way, his book Markings is really worth reading. He was the second Secretary General of the United Nations. U Thant was the first. I remember it. I was a little kid when it happened, but it was so cool. But can you identify something that the UN is promoting right now that you think is not consistent with humanitarian and progressive values?
I think they're...
they're feeding people around the world. They're stopping wars around the world. They're vaccinating children around the world. They're calling for human rights around the world. What are they doing wrong?
I don't disagree with that, but I think their International Panel on Climate Change is a conspiracy to increase the price of oil. I think that's also why they want war with Iran.
Increasing the price, well, the UN doesn't want war with Iran. They helped negotiate the Iran deal. And increasing the price of oil would be a good thing. Oil is killing this planet. So if your big concern about the UN is the IPCC, then you must be a person who doesn't believe that climate change is happening.
I think that climate changes. I've written 2 papers on this and studied it exhaustively for almost 43 years now.
That does not make you a scientist, Hobart.
I am a scientist.
That does not make you a competent scientist.
Anybody who knows me knows I'm competent.
Okay.
The thing is what we keep getting told is going to happen, the West Antarctic ice sheet melting, a sea level coming up 20 feet, happened several times before in the history of this world. The climate's always changing.
Yep.
I'm not saying we should keep on going.
Yeah,
like
but we're not seeing 10,000 years of the Siberian traps erupting right now, producing the kind of climate change that it did at the beginning of the Permian 250 million years ago. We're not seeing the gap between Panama. Hobart, hold on just a second. The reason why the climate was so different, millions of years, 3 million years ago, specifically, was that the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans the Pacific Ocean flowed into the Atlantic. The isthmus that is part of Central America right now did not exist. It was underwater. And so we had a completely different planetary circular heat cycle in the oceans.
The rise of the Himalayas is another one.
Yeah, but that's not happening right now. What's happening right now is we're dumping hundreds of billions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. And it's poisoning our atmosphere, and it may well kill all of us. Hobart, you need to go back and look at the basic science. Check out arctic-news.blogspot.com. Just look at that, Hobart, and spend some time with that site, arctic-news.blogspot.com, and then call me back next week, and we'll have a conversation. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. Oh, hi. I was just meditating, listening to the sounds of the ocean from this app, from my brainwaves that are being detected by the Muse headband. To find out more about it, check out choosemuse.com, code TOM. Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Superbeats. More information is available over at tomsbeats.com, THOMSBEETS.com, or by calling 800-568-9889. The new X chair, it's the X3, is just such a big upgrade from even the old X chair, which I think was one of the very best chairs, if not the best chair, office chair on the market. Check it out at xchairtom, THOM, xchairtom.com. Cameron Hughes travels the world looking for the finest wines and then bottles them in this lot way so that you can save an enormous amount of money. Last night, Louise and I had the 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was extraordinary. You can learn more at chwine.com/Tom.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
What's going on in the world today? This report is underwritten by Loving What You Do, Ellen Ratner's new book, and goatsfortheoldgoat.com. On the line with us is the chief foreign correspondent for Talk Media News, Luke Vargas. You can follow him on Twitter at The Courier. Luke, welcome back to the program. It looks like Russia is letting guest workers from North Korea in violation of UN sanctions. What's that all about? I saw that in the Financial Times this morning.
Yeah, this is originally a Wall Street Journal report. They have been a busy publication this week when it comes to trying to peel back the lid on North Korean activity. They're the ones, I think, on early Monday morning that had that report saying that there was some evidence of new intercontinental ballistic missile production at one of North Korea's facilities. Now the paper is reporting that since about this time last year, 10,000 new North Korean workers have registered in Russia. There's been extensive reporting on this trend through the years. I have met some North Koreans in Moscow at a North Korean restaurant. That's one of the more obvious places where you can find these North Korean workers, many of whom get paid in cash and many of whom send back the majority of their earnings to the North Korean government. But they're also employed in various types of, sort of harder labor, working in factories, working at mines in eastern parts of Russia that are much closer to the North Korean border. And this had been, this is such a profitable source of cash for the North Korean regime, getting about $150 million to $300 million each year in cash from these workers from Russia alone, that the UN Security Council last year, and at one point previous to that, had decided, look, we've got to cut down on this. We've got to demand that no new contracts be signed. The workers that are still there can serve out their contracts. That's what Russia is saying is the misunderstanding here, that these are several thousand people who have contracts going until the end of 2019, and that the paperwork that the Wall Street Journal had obtained was just sort of sort of changes in salary and things like that. But the U.S. seems to be taking this seriously. Just a minute before getting on the phone with you, we got an email from the Nikki Haley's office here at the United Nations. The U.S. is considering this Wall Street Journal report to basically be fact, saying that this is further proof Russia is not being cooperative on North Korea. And Nikki Haley pointed out that, just several weeks ago, we had Russia and China join together to block a statement that would have investigated oil shipments on the high seas, these ship-to-ship oil transfers, which allegedly helped North Korea sort of get more oil than it's permitted to get according to international sanctions. So put it all together, I'm pretty surprised, to be honest, Tom, just how outspoken in condemnation the State Department and Nikki Haley have been today in condemning specifically Russian compliance with these North Korean sanctions.
It'll be interesting to see if...
At least with China, you've seen sort of an illusion, right, where, we keep paying lip service to their great assistance because I think we have bigger things we want to work on with them. It doesn't seem like the same approach is being used in these criticisms of Russia.
It'll be interesting to see if Donald Trump has a word to say about this. I'm guessing that he won't.
He's delegated most of these sort of sanctions complaints to Tillerson, or rather, not Tillerson, Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley, who I still think has sort of the longest leash to be able to be critical of interests that the president himself doesn't want to condemn.
Yeah. She's still a rising Republican star, and this is, and unless she turns Donald Trump into an enemy, there's a good future for her in the Republican Party, I think. Meanwhile, you say the White House is staffing up to unveil a Mideast peace plan? Really?
Yeah, this is the National Security Council of the White House, which has put out a call for volunteers from other U.S. agencies to send over employees for 6 to 12 months. I don't know if this is going to happen on evenings or weekends, but the point is the same, that they want to start doing strategic communications. They want to start working with allies in the region and trying to find the time to unveil this still as yet unfinished peace plan. We know little about the actual plan. The Associated Press, which broke this story, was pretty candid in their reporting, saying despite the fact that the National Security Council seems to be making motions towards unveiling a plan, our reporters have heard absolutely nothing about what that plan might look like for months, which I think is a good reminder that this may be putting the cart ahead of the horse. But nonetheless, we're hearing that the basic principle of this peace plan is that the U.S. is going to give money toward Gaza reconstruction. That this is not, they don't even want to wade into the bigger issues of recognition of a Palestinian state or anything like that, a two-state solution, that they're going to go to sort of more immediate issues. And the thinking in the White House is give the Palestinians enough money for Gaza reconstruction, and they'll put aside all of their demands for having a, Palestinian capital in East Jerusalem or the right to go back to homes that they've been kicked off of. To me, given all of the bad blood on the behalf of the Palestinians, there's complete distrust of the Greenblatt Kushner process, that there's not going to be a way to use, $100 million in Gaza reconstruction money to get them to bury their chief complaints. So
it would have
I'm
to
pretty
be
cynical
billions.
about this pitch.
I mean,
it would have to be billions.
Yeah,
but even then, I don't think they wouldn't save face by taking cash in exchange for forestalling really important political demands. So just like the past peace process that we've seen and all the actions from this administration so far in the Israel-Palestine question, I'm not too confident about this one either.
Yeah, me neither. Luke Vargas, you can follow him on Twitter at The Courier. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, Tom. Talk to you soon.
Always good talking with you. Yep. Look forward to next week. We'll be back with more of Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program in just a moment. Please stick around. It's coming up on 58 minutes past the hour here in the place where despair is not an option.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Oh, hi. I was just meditating, listening to the sounds of the ocean from this app, from my brainwaves that are being detected by the Muse headband. To find out more about it, check out choosemuse.com, code TOM. Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Superbeats. More information is available over at tomsbeats.com, THOMSBEETS.com, or by calling 800-568-9889. The new X chair, it's the X3, is just such a big upgrade from even the old X chair, which I think was one of the very best chairs, if not the best chair, office chair on the market. Check it out at xchairtom, T-H-O-M, xchairtom.com. Cameron Hughes travels the world looking for the finest wines and then bottles them in this lot way so that you can save an enormous amount of money. Last night, Louise and I had the 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was extraordinary. You can learn more at chwine.com/Tom. It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from The Undercommons, Fugitive Planning and Black Study by Stefano Harney and Fred Moten. This is from the introduction. It starts with love, exchange, fellowship. It ends as it begins, in motion, in between various modes of being and belonging, and on the way to new economies of giving, taking, being with and for. And it ends with a ride in a Buick Skylark on a way to another place altogether. Surprising, perhaps, after we have engaged dispossession, debt, dislocation, and violence, but not surprising when you have understood that the projects of fugitive planning and black study are mostly about reaching out to find connection. They're about making common cause with the brokenness of being, a brokenness, I would venture to say, that is also blackness, that remains blackness, and will, despite all, remain broken, because this book is not a prescription for repair. If we do not seek to fix what has been broken, then what? How do we resolve to live with brokenness, with being broke, which is also what Moten and Harney called debt? Well, given that debt is sometimes a history of giving, at other times a history of taking, at all times a history of capitalism, and given that debt also signifies a promise of ownership but never delivers on that promise, we have to understand that debt is something that cannot be paid off. Debt, as Harney puts it, presumes a kind of individualized realization to a naturalized economy that is predicated upon exploitation. Can we have, he asks, another sense of what is owed that does not presume a nexus of activities like recognition and acknowledgement, payment and gratitude? Can debt become a principle of elaboration? Moten links economic debt to the brokenness of being in the interview with Stefan Shukatis, who he acknowledges that some debts should be paid and that much is owed, especially to black people, by white people. And yet he says, I also know that it is, that what it is that is supposed to be repaired is irreparable. It can't be repaired. The only thing we can do is tear this stuff down completely and build something new, end of quote. The Undercommons do not come to pay their debts, to repair what has been broken, to fix what has been undone. If you want to know what the Undercommons wants, what Moten and Harney want, what black people, indigenous people, queers, and poor people want, what we, the we who cohabit in the space of the Undercommons want, it is this. We cannot be satisfied with the recognition and acknowledgement generated by the very system that denies A, that anything was ever broken, and B, that we deserve to be the broken part. So we refuse to ask for recognition, and instead we want to take apart, dismantle, tear down that structure right now. That right now limits our ability to find each other, to see beyond it, and to access the places that we know live outside its walls. We cannot say what new structures will replace the ones we live with yet, because once we have torn stuff down, we will inevitably see more and see differently and feel a new sense of wanting and being and becoming. What we want after the break will be different from what we think we want before the break, and both are necessarily different from the desires that issue from being in the dark. Let's come at this by another path. In the melancholic and visionary 2009 film version of Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are, 1963, Max, the small seeker who leaves his room, his home, his family to find the world beyond, finds a world of lost and lonely beasts, and they promptly make him their king. Max is the first king the wild things have had, whom they did not eat
and who did not, in turn, try to eat them. And the beasts are the first grown things that Max has met who want his opinion, his judgment, and his rule. Max's power is that he is small while they are big. He promises the beasts that he has no plans to eat them, and that this is more than anyone has ever promised them. He promises them that he will find ways through and around and will slip through the cracks and re-crack the cracks if they fill up. He promises to keep sadness at bay and to make the world with the wild creatures that roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible claws. That Max fails to make the wild things happy or to save them or to make the world with them is less important than the fact that he found them and he recognized in them the end of something and potentially the path to an alternative in his world, or an alternative to his world, excuse me. The wild things were not the utopian creatures of fairy tales. They were the rejected and lost subjects of the world Max had left behind. And because he shuttles between the Oedipal land where his mother rules and the ruined world of the wild, he knows the parameters of the real. He sees what is included and what is left out. And he is now able to set sail for another place, a place that is neither the home he left nor the home to which he wants to return. Moten and Harney want to gesture to another place, a wild place that is not simply the leftover space that limbs real and regulated zones of polite society. Rather, it is a wild place that continuously produces its own unregulated wilderness. The zone we enter through Moten and Harney is ongoing and exists in the present, and as Harney puts it, some kind of demand is already being enacted, fulfilled in the call itself. While describing the riots of London in 2011, Harney suggests that the riots and insurrections do not separate out the request, the demand, and the call. Rather, they enact the one in the other. The book is The Undercommons, Fugitive Planning and Black Study. Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. In the last hour, I was reading the story of the fascists in Greece who beat up the mayor of the second largest city in that country. And I said, you know, this has not yet come to the United States, but if, you know, billionaires keep stoking racist Tea Party fires, if they keep using race as an issue, if they keep promoting white identity politics, and if Donald Trump keeps promoting white identity politics, which he's doing on a basically daily basis, if this continues, you are going to see, you know, mayors of American cities attacked. And sure enough, Josh Kellety, in writing in the Seattle Times, the King County Sheriff's Office, Burien Mayor Jimmy Mata was assaulted and verbally accosted over the weekend, purportedly because of his Latin heritage and his support of the city of Burien's sanctuary city policy. This is a city, little town in Washington State. According to the King County Sheriff's Office, Mata was at a beer garden in the Old Burien block party in the evening of Saturday, July 21, when a slim white male in his 60s approached him, put him in a headlock, and said, "I'm not going to let your people take over, and illegals aren't going to take over our community." He forced the mayor to the ground, injuring him on a nearby fence post, drawing blood, and then the suspect ran away. He has, by the way, since been arrested. But the election cycle, they note, this is the Seattle Times, the election cycle that brought Mata into office was highly charged with nativist anti-immigrant sentiment and followed attempts by anti-immigrant activists to repeal the city's sanctuary city ordinance, which prevents Burien police officers and city employees from asking people about their immigration status. And in mid-September, the King County elections pulled a ballot initiative that would have nullified the city's sanctuary city policy. Mayor Mata says, "This is a criminal act against myself. I am the victim. We have no room for this behavior. We take these allegations seriously. People have the right to express their opinions. However, they do not have the right to assault or threaten people nor damage property in the course of that expression." It's already here. Amazing. Amazing. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind?
Hey, not too much, Tom. Hey, I just wanted to bring up a point about, we were discussing earlier the topic of martial law and the possibility of that.
Right.
and I've heard this. I mean, I'm talking earlier in the week.
Yeah, Monday.
Yeah, and I've heard this sentiment from both right wingers and left wingers, for lack of a better word, that our sons and daughters in the military would never turn their weapons on us. Okay, and I, having spent 25 years in the Army myself, I just kind of want to clarify something. I mean, that sentiment is very nice. That sentiment is nice, and I get it. But it's not factually correct. And I know you know this because you've lived overseas a lot. Martial law is usually not violent, and it is oftentimes preferred by the populace. It's very insidious. And I kind of think that, I use the Philippines as a good comparison to the United States. When Gloria Arroyo was routinely declaring martial law to protect the power grid, I could see martial law becoming preferred in America.
Martial law is the logical extension of law and order.
Yeah.
It's the extreme end of it, of Nixon's law and order. Keep those people under control. Keep them in their homes, keep them from going out. And those people, of course, typically are minorities or dissidents or, whatever, but typically minorities. Yeah, I think you're right, Dave. I think you're absolutely right. And it's a really important point. People, you say martial law and people think of, the military marching down the middle of the street, 5 across with guns. And it's typically far more subtle than that. And it's usually enforced by the police as well as the military. Excellent points all, Dave. Thank you for the call. Wow. Gary in Northwest Chicago. Hey, Gary, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Just a question on the comments that you made about amending the Constitution to reflect a greater power to people and...
That the rights of humanity and the rights of the environment should be higher in the hierarchy than the rights of property, yes.
Okay. Then you are in favor of a convention of states, then?
No, I'm not. This could be done with a single amendment to the Constitution. It doesn't require a convention.
You're sure?
Yes.
And how many states need to...
It's happened 28 times in the past, I think, maybe 27.
And how many states need to approve that?
3/4 of the states.
Okay.
And it has to be passed by 2/3 of the Congress.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Amending the Constitution is a huge lift. But when the country is on fire, and if this wild weather gets significantly worse, and I believe it will, and I believe it will quickly, like over the next 2 or 3 years, you may see the political winds in this country, no pun intended, change really, really fast. We'll see. We'll see. But I think people are pretty freaked out about the environment right now. Richard in Los Angeles. Hey, Richard, what's up?
Hey, Tom. The Trump administration wants the ACLU to reunite the families that they separated.
Now, was that a throwaway soundbite, or is that an actual policy? I saw the headline. I haven't read the story.
It came over CNN this morning, and the only thing I can think of, Tom, they're looking for a scapegoat.
Yeah. And a resolution. I mean, if the ACLU would do it, it would take the pressure off the Trump administration. And now you've got this story. I mean, this what is it? ProPublica.org right now has this story which is starting to migrate into the media. I saw it on Huffington Post this morning, but I haven't seen it anywhere else yet. That there were either 6 or 8, I believe it was 6 young boys in one of the facilities that ICE is running, or ICE is mandating these or remanding these kids to, who were all molested by a young man who worked there who was HIV positive and was having sex with these young boys. And I tweeted that to Ivanka Trump and said, this is more than a low point. I tweeted that out to her this morning. You can find it on my Twitter feed. And it is more than a low point, and this is not the only report of this kind of thing happening.
But I think the only
this
reason
is hurting
for this, Tom,
the Trumps.
Oh yeah, the only reason for this, Tom, is they're looking for a scapegoat.
Yeah, I think they're looking for a scapegoat, and I think they're also looking for a way out. And Donald Trump's technique has always been to blame other people for problems that he caused. He'll take the credit for things that are good. He always wants to spread the blame around. Richard, thank you for the call. It's an important and fascinating story. Let's see here. Stephen in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, Stephen, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's up?
Hey, Steve. Hey, Tom.
Hi, Steve.
If you lived in the valley here, you could have your anything goes summer all year round.
How is that?
Oh gosh, well it's hot here just about all year round.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I mean it's insane, and dovetailing off of that a little bit, I want to speak about those the coke hate merchants. And it ties in with the economy and the weather. They're very toxic. This Coctopus network, and it's a cancer. These attacks. We've got Trump in office, and these attacks on the media, which they've created all this anger and hostility. We got a very hostile work environment for the press, and that's horrible. Somebody is going to pay for this. Now, last night in Phoenix here, the Metro Phoenix, the Valley, we had one of the more huge dust storms and windstorms, rain, everything that accompanied it with it that we've ever seen. In the backyard, our trees were bending over. This morning, we saw some tile tearing off the roofs and stuff. Trees were knocked to the ground. Just a lot of damage. And
this is the kind of weather the Phoenix never used to get, isn't it?
Well, in summertime, we've been down here 30 years. We're from Madison, and we get the monsoonal flow. It comes up from the Gulf.
Sure. In
July and August, and it's now going into September too. And actually, we had some monsoonal type stuff as late as October, maybe even November last year, which was weird. Just creating the dust storms here. And we live on the south end of the valley here, and we get the brunt of it coming up here. And there was just horrific winds and stuff, and it's getting stronger and worse each year. And frankly, what the Koch brothers they're doing, they're practicing, in my opinion, economic and ecological terrorism against our planet and us.
Yeah, I would be reluctant to call anybody a terrorist. I think that one of the things my dad taught me when I was a kid growing up is that everybody, in everything they do, generally speaking, I mean there are a few psychopathology exceptions to this, but everybody in everything they do is trying to do what they think will achieve the best outcome in that moment.
I can understand all that.
And I think that the Kochs want this country to work. They just are wrong about the way to make it work. They think the way to make it work is to put the very, very wealthy in charge and have the economy run the country rather than the people.
Right. Well, the end result is that's what's actually happening against our planet.
Right.
But anyways, metaphorically or rhetorically here, how much will be enough for these people? It's kind of like Ted Kennedy said in his old, reel that you've put on there many times.
Yeah.
How much is enough? It never is. But that's all I got. Thanks.
Excellent question, Stephen. How much is enough? Apparently $80 billion isn't enough. Stephen, thank you for the call, and thanks for watching us there in the Valley in Arizona. Fascinating story. Keep us up to date on how Phoenix's weather is doing. Weather is the symptom of climate change. I mean, that's what's happening right now. It's like the fever that you get when you get the flu.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And it's a symptom that we need to take very, very seriously because it's big and we're little, and it's strong and we're relatively fragile. We'll be back. And welcome back. Carol in Monessen, Pennsylvania. Hey, Carol, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Well, I have several things, but mainly I wanted to talk about what happened at the Pennsylvania rally the other night.
Night before last, yep.
Yes, when he was so unhinged. And he made such a bizarre statement that I couldn't figure out why he said it. What he said was that Putin wanted him to win, that he really knew Putin wanted him to win. And obviously, that's not what Putin said. We all heard him say.
No, wait a second. You got it backwards, Carol. He said Putin wanted him to lose.
I'm sorry, yes, lose. Yes.
And Putin told the reporter, yes, I did. Yes, I did. I did want him to win, and I did direct Russian efforts to help him win.
Exactly. My mental dyslexia set in there.
It's quite all right.
But anyway, I couldn't figure out why he would say that. And then earlier you had a caller on who said he was going to make a prediction. I think it had to do with the blue wave.
Yeah.
And I bet you any amount of money that Trump keeps repeating that, because that way when the blue wave does hit, and I suspect it will, I really do, that when it does hit, Trump is going to say, the Russians wanted me to lose, they're meddling in the election.
I agree. We had a caller in the last hour who said essentially the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you know, it makes perfect sense to me. Donald Trump has never taken responsibility for anything in his life unless it turned out well. Anything that turned out poorly, you know, he tries to get his fingerprints away from it as fast as possible. So, yeah, I think spot on. You know, I'm entirely expecting that. Yep. Carol, thanks for the call. This is a big deal. It really is. Let's see. Chaz in Lakewood, Washington. Hey, Chaz, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Nazar Drovia, comrade. Another glorious day in Trumpistan, is it not?
Indeed. What's up?
Hey, I thought I'd better call and kind of crowd out the concerned trolls.
How so?
You know, the guys who come on with the false protestations about, oh, darn, you know, I used to be a Democrat, et cetera, et cetera. So I just give them a little less airtime.
Okay. Did you have something to say?
Do I have what?
Did you have something to say, or is that it?
No, well, I just wonder if I could send flowers. No, the truth of the matter is my topic here is ranked choice voting. You've mentioned it a couple times. I looked into it a little bit, but I really kind of need, and I just can't seem to get anything without spin, and I wonder if you could either give an explanation or a segment based on ranked choice voting.
I'll give you a really simple explanation, Chaz. I'll give you a real simple explanation. Remember the 2000 election?
I'll take your answer off air, Tom. Thanks.
That's fine. I'll keep you on if you want to listen. But you remember the 2000 election where you had Al Gore, George W. Bush, and Ralph Nader.
Ross Perot?
No, Ross Perot was 92. Ralph Nader in 2000. And Ralph Nader pulled thousands of votes in Florida. And Al Gore, quote, lost officially by 500 votes in Florida. And so if you lived in Florida and you were a good Democrat, but you were also very progressive, and you liked what Ralph Nader had to say, and you liked his policy prescriptions, but you didn't want to screw up the Democratic Party, if you had ranked choice voting in Florida during that election, you would have ranked Ralph Nader first, Al Gore second. And then what happens is when Ralph Nader doesn't hit the threshold, the 20% threshold or whatever it is, for serious consideration, that first choice vote gets thrown away, and your second choice vote becomes your vote. And so your vote goes to Al Gore. That way, you're not screwing up your own party. Chaz, I got to run. Thank you. Oh, hi. I was just meditating, listening to the sounds of the ocean from this app, from my brainwaves that are being detected by the Muse headband. To find out more about it, check out choosemuse.com, code TOM. Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Superbeats. More information is available over at tomsbeats.com, THOMSBEETS.com, or by calling 800-568-9889. The new X chair, it's the X3, is just such a big upgrade from even the old X chair, which I think was one of the very best chairs, if not the best chair, office chair on the market. Check it out at xchairtom, THOM, xchairtom.com. Cameron Hughes travels the world looking for the finest wines and then bottles them in this lot way so that you can save an enormous amount of money. Last night, Louise and I had the 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was extraordinary. You can learn more at chwine.com/Tom.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter.
And Barbara in St. Paul, Minnesota. Hey, Barbara, what's on your mind?
Hello, Tom. How you doing? I haven't spoken to you in a while, but you look good. Since you've been sick, you look very well.
Thank you. I'm feeling good. So what's on your mind?
You know, the earlier piece that you read today about a young man, since it's been so long ago, I literally forgot about when Barack Obama tried to help people whose mortgage was underwater.
Right.
Now, whatever the bill was, I do not imagine on the bill he put on there, I am only going to help African American people that's mortgages is underwater.
Correct.
I know that wasn't in the bill.
Yep. You're right.
He said, I'm going to help every American whose mortgage is underwater.
That's right.
This is what I understood. I don't understand. You know, there was a Martin Luther King gave a speech on the steps of Montgomery. And he stood and he told the poor, and let's be really frank, there are Caucasian people that are poor. There are Caucasian people right now that are struggling to keep their heads above water.
Yep.
This is it. This is what's going on. And he told them, basically what he said, they've been hoodwinked.
Barbara,
they've been hoodwinked.
Do you remember the news reports from that time? I remember really clearly, and I'd like to reality check this with you. I remember really clearly a news report, and this was repeated several times, where they were talking about President Obama wanting to help homeowners whose mortgages were underwater, and then they would always follow it, or the times that I saw, and like I said, I remember this clearly. They said, this is mostly first-time home buyers, and they are getting into the housing market because interest rates are at a historic low, and money has been really, really easy until the crash came at the end of the Bush 8 years, and that these first-time home buyers are disproportionately minorities, Hispanics and blacks, and they just kind of mentioned it in passing, and then you get Rick Santelli going, you know what? We're going to bail out these people. We need a Tea Party, and then you got the Tea Party out there going, taxed enough already. Yeah, no, do not help those minorities with their mortgages, and I mean, you know, it's like they racialize this thing. It's nuts.
Yeah. See, this is what I'm saying. These people have been told over and over and over and over again, you're being hoodwinked. And why don't you understand that? You voted for a man that says he's not going to walk in and give you a dog on that. Donald Trump would not even let you walk into Mar-a-Lago. He would not shake your hand. He would not touch you. He never does that to his rallies. He don't touch them. He just claps, smiles, and throws his hands out.
Right.
But he doesn't touch these people. I literally don't understand. It scares me.
Yeah.
It scares me to walk outside the door sometime and you walk into a store and you have no idea what you might face that day because of the color of your skin, not for the content of your heart, for the color of your skin. Like I've always said, I have people in my family that fought for this country very proudly. I fly my flag every day. I don't never take it down because I love America. I don't have to believe what you believe. I'm sorry, you're dumb. I'm not.
There you go.
I want my kids to have schools that teach all children how to read. I don't care what color they are. We need an electorate that is informed.
Yep.
This is America. This country is the greatest country on earth.
Yeah, very well said,
People
Barbara.
break their necks to come here.
I completely agree. Spot on. I completely agree. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate the call. Barbara in St. Paul. We'll be back with, we're going to hit the news here at the bottom of the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls on Anything Goes Friday right after this. Boy, you think back to, I mean, that was what seeded the Tea Party, was Barack Obama wanting to bail out homeowners. Remember? I mean, you know, they stopped him, by the way, successfully.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And they used the weapon of race to do it. And which is why we are where we are right now. It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Seize the Time, the story of the Black Panther Party and Huey P. Newton by Bobby Seale. This is from page 85, a subchapter titled Huey Backs the Pigs Down. And there are a few words in here that I'll be filling in, as it were. They're walking, he says, one day as we were walking out of the office, I guess we'd been there about a month or so, a pig passed by. He saw us coming out of the office with shotguns and pistols on our sides. About 6 or 7 of us came out of the office there in the daytime, and we looked at the pig as he passed by, and he jumped on his radio because he saw us coming out of the office with these pieces and stuff. We had just finished field stripping weapons, learning about 00 buckshot, learning about the 9mm and the .45, and having a political education session. We had a .45 and a .357 Magnum in the group and a couple of M1s. We had 3 or 4 shotguns by then. We bought up guns like a son of a bitch then. The pig went down 2 blocks and turned around, came back up the other side of the street. They were building rapid transit, BART, right down from Grove Street there, and we went up the other side of the boulevard and came back. We readily assessed that the pigs were ready to see what the F was happening, that this pig had radioed in, and he was running it down, how he had, quote, seen some N-words come out of a place here with some guns and blop, blop, de bloop, etc., come out of this office with guns and stuff. He was radioing into other pigs to help get him. Huey had his father's car that day, and he goes through that whole thing. So anyhow, the police pull him over, and Huey got in the car, and the pig came up to the window. You have any driver's license? So Huey rolled the window down. That wasn't more than a 3 or 4 inch crack in the window. Huey handed his license out the window. Is this your true name, the pig said? And Huey said, yes, that's my true name, Huey P. Newton. Is this your true address, 841 47th Street? And Huey said, yep, that's my true address, 841 47th Street. And what are you doing with the guns? And Huey said, what are you doing with your gun? This particular pig decided he wasn't going to argue, so he went back and got his little writing pad there where they fill out S-word. Your true name is Huey P. Newton? Huey said, that's right. The pig wrote it down. Your true address is 841 47th Street? Huey said, that's right. The pig then looked at his license. What's your phone number? And Huey said, 5, and stopped and wouldn't say anything else. And the pig said, 5 what? And this is when all the S-word between the pig and the party and the pigs began. Huey said, the Fifth Amendment. You ever heard of it? Don't you know about the constitutional right of a person not to testify against himself? 5, I don't have to give you anything but my identification, name, and address, so therefore I don't even want to talk to you. You can leave my car and leave me alone. I don't even want to hear you. What do you mean, the pig said. And Huey said, just what I said. The constitutional right of any man is that he doesn't have to testify against himself. And Huey had a big M1 sitting to his right with his hand on it. I had this 9mm sitting beside me, and Huey had this M1 at his side. Huey was driving. 4 other brothers were in the back seat. One of them was Bobby Hutton. They were being quiet because Huey told them to be quiet, and the pig is going crazy. He's by himself, and Huey's got all these black N-words in the car going for the MFer. Meanwhile, while the pig is trying to get bad, 3 cars drove up behind us and 1 in the front. Some more were in the driveway. Blop, 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 de blue. Then another car came in front of us. A pig jumped out of the car, walked up to our car, and said through the crack in the window with a hoggish voice trying to sound intimidating, what's going on here? And Huey said, the same basic procedures that are supposed to go on. Huey rolled the window down another 5 or 6 inches. The pigs were looking at the guns in the car. Can I see that pistol there? One of the pigs said. No, you can't see it, Huey told him. I was beginning to get skeptical about what was happening because he pointed to my 9mm pistol. Huey was on probation, and if they thought that this was Huey's pistol, I didn't know this law stuff the way Huey knew it, so I moved the pistol over beside me real close. It had been lying in the middle of the seat. I said, no, you can't see it. Huey said, no, you can't see the pistol, nor this, pointing to his rifle. And you don't want to look, and I don't want you to look at it. You don't have to look at it. Is that your pistol? He asked Huey. And I said, no, it's not his pistol, it's my pistol. I said that because I was thinking the man's going to jump on Huey because he already told me about the probation law. If he gets caught with a pistol, he's burned. But if he gets caught with a rifle, the man can't mess with him because his probation officer told him he can carry a rifle or shotgun and he couldn't stop him. The pig said, can I see it or not? So Huey said to me, I'll talk. And then he said to the pig, no, you can't see the pistol. Get away from the car. We don't want you around the car, and that's all there is to it. Well, I can ask him if I can see his pistol or not, the pig says. So I says, well, you can't see my pistol. The MFers tried to get indignant. They were blabbing and oinking to each other about who in the hell we thought we were, and Constitution my ass, they're just turning it around. Then the pig said to Huey, who the hell do you think you are? Look, damn it, Huey said. He opened the car door. This is where Huey got mad. I mean, you have to imagine this N-word. He got mad because these dogs were going to carry on and they were bracing up like they were bad. Huey didn't go for this at all. Huey got very mad. He opened up the door saying, who the hell do you think you are? In the first place, this man, pointing at the pig, came up here and asked me for my license like he was citing me for a ticket or observation of some kind. This police officer is supposed to be carrying out his duty, and here you come talking about our guns? Huey put his hand around his M1 rifle and continued, we have a constitutional right to carry the guns, and anyway, I don't want to hear it. The pigs backed up a couple of steps, and Huey was coming out of the car. Huey had his hand back in the car getting his M1, and you know, if you've ever seen Huey, he gets growly but articulate. He came out of the car with his M1. Huey knows this law so well that he wouldn't have had the one M1 loaded inside the car. So he came out of the car, he dropped around into the chamber right away. Clack, clop. Who do you think you all are anyway? Huey said to the pigs. And the pigs were all on the sidewalk harassing all the brothers and sisters who gathered around. You move on down the street, said the pig.
Huey started interrupting. You don't have to move down the street. Don't go anywhere. These pigs can't keep you from observing. You have a right to observe an officer carrying out his duty. And these pigs, they listen to all this S-word, and it goes on from there. It's a great story. Seize the Time by Bobby Seale.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. It's Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program. And Albert in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Albert, it says here you disagree with me, so you go to the top of the list. What are you disagreeing with me about?
Well, you made the comment that the Koch brothers really want things to run well, but they just have a different idea about how to do it.
That's my foundational assumption about human nature is that we all, in every interaction, are trying to get the best outcome. We're just often dysfunctional in trying to get there.
Well, we counter that argument with people like the Koch brothers and the uber rich. They don't want things to run well. They make money when things fall apart. When things crash and burn, when businesses go bankrupt, when people have medical emergencies, when the world goes to hell, they run in and scoop up all the resources cheap and leave us hanging. Disaster capitalism, Naomi Klein, hit it right on the head.
You know, you're right about that.
They not only like things to fall, crash, and burn so they can pick up resources cheap, they also do things to create chaos and create things to fall apart so they can go in and scoop up resources cheap. There are whole industries that operate on that model, and that philosophy has filtered down to the rank and file of American life, where there is nothing more exciting than a fire sale. When someone goes out of business, we can all run over there and scoop up and get whatever we can cheap. We're a kind of a vulture society, and it comes from the top down.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, Naomi Klein wrote a book about disaster capitalism, and you've correctly characterized it. And there are entire industries and individuals who are devoted to thriving on other people's disasters. Yeah. Well, Mitt Romney was creating disasters, but yeah, thriving on them too. And the Koch brothers are worth $80 billion or more now, and they were only worth 5 or 10 billion. And I think before the last crash, they certainly did well, as I recall. But I'm still, maybe it's just me. I always want to believe the best of people.
Yes, the most people are good, Tom, but we're talking about the 5% of people who are hyper fear and safety needs. They need to have a buffer around them, bigger than anyone can imagine. And the only way they can do that is to tear everything else down, because they just can't get it with a normal job.
Yeah,
I get it. And do extraordinary activities to collect that wealth.
I get it, Albert. And your phone, by the way, is breaking up really badly. I don't know what the deal is, but Albert, thank you. That was an important counterpoint to my earlier comment, and I'll just leave it at that. I can't disagree with anything that Michael said. Miguel in Chicago. Hey, Miguel, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
I am
well. I have a question. Well, I want to see your opinion on it about voter ID. Mm-hmm. You know how Trump and the Republicans are talking about voter ID.
Yeah.
And I know well that they're doing it to suppress the vote, especially for minorities, right?
Yep. And young people and old people.
Yeah. Is there a way the Democrats, the progressives, can turn this around and use it for advantage? Like make a national voter ID.
There has been discussion of that, and in fact, back in I'm trying to remember if it was Al Gore who was proposing this or if it was Barack Obama. I'm pretty sure it was Al Gore. There was some talk, this was 15, 20 years ago. There was some conversation about having a national ID card, and the right freaked out about it. Whoa, you're going to turn us into a Nazi, your papers, please society where everybody has to carry their ID card all the time and the police can just walk up and say your papers, please. And we can't have that. That's what the Nazis did. And, so that discussion went away and got replaced with Real ID. And the Real ID was opposed by many right-wingers to the point that many states have not adopted Real ID, which is, a national identity standard that is required to get on an airplane, or will be starting in 2020, I think it is. And so, it's an idea that has been kicked around, and it's been largely, I think, rejected. But you still have this problem. I mean, the reality is that people who are not citizens of the United States, with very few exceptions, don't want to vote. They don't want to go to jail for 2 years. I mean, the thing that prevents people from voting more than anything else is the same thing that prevents people from shoplifting. You go to jail if it happens. The Trump administration has been arresting people in real high-profile busts, particularly black ex-felons in southern states where it's illegal to vote as an ex-felon, arresting them and charging them with multiple years in prison. I mean, major things to freak people out, to scare people away from voting. They're doing absolutely everything they can to do that. And I just think the whole idea of needing ID more than the very first time you register just to prove that you're a citizen is crazy. And voter registration should be instantaneous when you turn 18. If the draft can instantly register you, you should be able to be instantly registered to vote. I mean, this is not rocket science. Most other countries do it this way. They don't go through all this because they don't have a political party that thrives on suppressing the vote of marginalized people, or the people that they want to marginalize. And, that's what's going on, Miguel. So, no, I don't think that that's a good idea. Miguel, I need to move along, but thank you for the call. That's a thought-provoking one. Patrick in Los Angeles. Hey, Patrick, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Yeah, thanks for the time. I appreciate it. I don't know, yesterday, the day before, you were talking to a fellow that, was really, trying to push you around with regard to government can't do anything correctly. I think you missed an opportunity in that, the argument should be, well, no, it's not government, it's conservative government. And you've talked about this a lot, with regard to how, they constantly put wolves in the hen house. They leave blood and feathers all over the pavement with regard to the damage that they do in, pick the part of government, if it's, FEMA or HUD or the Defense Department or wherever, Department of Education. They're constantly making a mess, screwing up, and then pointing at it to tell people how badly it operates.
Yeah.
You teach us about this. So
no, you're right, Patrick. I did miss that chance. You're absolutely right, because I could have said to him, no, what you're saying is that Republican government, conservative government can't do anything right, and typically doesn't.
You know what? That should be the standard answer. It's not government; it's conservative government.
Yeah.
So
versus.
That's all I got to say.
Okay. Well, you said it very well, Patrick. You said it very, very well, very clearly. Thank you very much. That was good. Jim in Los Angeles. Hey, Jim, what's up? Whoop. Hang on just a second, Jim. There you go. Jim, you're on the air.
Hi, Tom. I have two solutions. He said stick with the one. So on all the voters that Kurt Kobach prevented from voting, my solution is anyone who has standing, like the woman from Wisconsin who had voted in 56 elections and she was not permitted to vote. Why can she not go to a district attorney and charge the Secretary of State with felony grand theft? A man's vote is his most important possession. You cannot protect your family and loved ones if you cannot control your destiny with your vote. One DA filing charges, could set a precedent.
That's a really interesting question, Jim. I would say probably the answer is that the Constitution aggressively protects property rights, but for a property right to be protected, it has to have an assignable monetary value, and you can't assign a monetary value to a vote. In fact, when you do that, that's a form of election fraud, if you're buying people's votes or paying people to vote. And so the idea of money being associated with votes has been stripped out, and as a result, I don't think that the Constitution, or at least the current Supreme Court, would recognize a vote as a property right that you could sue against being deprived of. You might be able to sue for deprivation of good governance, but I'm not even sure that there's a right to that. But I absolutely get your point of view, Jim, and it's a good one. It's a solid one. Tyrone in Chicago. Hey, Tyrone, what's up?
Hey, hi Tom. How you doing? I'm glad to talk to you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Tom, I need to be educated on one thing. When Lyndon Johnson signed the bill in '64, then in '65, what was the bill in '64 about? And in '65, when he said, "I lost the South," what was that all about, Tom?
It was the Voting Rights Act.
Say it again, Tom.
I mean, you had the Civil Rights Act and you had the Voting Rights Act. It's, you know, they were, it was, I'm not an authority on these things, Tyrone. I'll tell you right up front. I'm not the guy to educate you about them if you want to know the details. But it was these were the laws that protected people's right to vote, particularly in southern states. Were they not? Am I missing something?
Okay, so in '65, it was not right here. These white wings say that Lyndon Johnson took the black man out the house to give him public aid. Because the white wings say that's why he signed the bill in '65.
I frankly, I don't remember the details of it, Tyrone. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot for the call. You know, I'd have to look it up. I'm sorry. Stephen in San Francisco. Hey, Stephen, thanks for listening to us on 910 AM, one of our newest affiliates. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Tom. It's nice to speak to you again. I'm going to go back to this. This is an old school sort of street thing here, where it looks like Putin has bought up all Trump's debt. So in order for him to pay him, since he's the president now, it's hard to move money now, he had to meet him secretly there, you know, to wire money. I mean, this is very simple. And if you look, Tom, who lives in Trump Tower? The rent roll in Trump Tower is a laundry list. One of the biggest launderers there is Paul Manafort, lived on the 23rd floor. So he had his little regime right there in Trump Tower.
Right. And you have a bunch of Russian oligarchs who own properties in Trump Tower. But, you know, are you suggesting that in that 2-hour private meeting, Vladimir Putin passed a check to Donald Trump?
Well, either that or a piece of paper saying where, you know, if you're listening in America, find out where the wire transfer went to, because that's what he did.
Yeah, I have a feeling that this is
transparent.
I have a feeling this is the stuff that's going to come out when Robert Mueller, after the elections, issues his indictments, and that Donald Trump will probably be an unindicted co-conspirator. That's my prediction. And especially now that he's got, I think his name is Weissman, he's got Trump's bookkeeper, who's been his bookkeeper since it was Fred Trump running the company. That is going to blow the doors open. That's why Donald Trump is screaming, "Stop the witch hunt."
He's unraveling. He's unraveling
right
at
in front of us
right now.
That's right. And my biggest fear is that he thinks, or he might reach the point where he thinks that the way out of this is to start a war. And you know, distract everybody's attention and get all that executive power like George Bush did.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, let's
hope he quits and just moves to Russia where he belongs right now. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Stephen, and thanks for listening to us in San Francisco on AM 910. It's Anything Goes Friday. We've had some great calls today. We will be back with more of your calls and the news of the day and my thoughts on all of the above right after this. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the home of the political revolution, the Thom Hartmann Program, 47 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Lillian watching us on Facebook Live in Chicago. Hey, Lillian, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Speaking of voter IDs, I just wanted to let you know, or ask you to let your voters know that here in Chicago, I just got my registration card, and people should be looking for that in their mail. My polling place never asks for it, but I don't know if other places do. So I don't know if it's just Chicago or just Illinois or the whole country. But I just got mine, so I think people should be looking for that, and I'd like you to tell your viewers if you can.
Okay, you've got it. Actually, you just did, but that's just as good. Yeah, be sure that you're registered to vote. Be sure that you have your voter registration card. If they try to give you a provisional ballot, raise holy hell, because that means your vote won't be counted. Lillian, thank you. Very, very well said. And thanks for watching us on Facebook. That's absolutely great. Bob, watching us on Free Speech TV in Seattle. Hey, Bob, what's up?
Yes. Hey, hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Well, I was wondering, I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but when I listened to the President of the United States rail against the press and say that the press is lying and they're printing untruths, I thought that there were laws against that called libel and
slander.
The other, yes.
Yeah. Slander's when it's spoken, libel's when it's published, or printed. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm wondering, when is he going to start bringing up court cases against these news sources that are printing lies?
Well, I get your question, Bob, and I get kind of the snark behind it. But the fact of the matter is that if you're a public figure, you can't. It's very, very difficult for a public figure to prove libel. You have to. There's a whole completely different set of rules for public figures. So, yeah, you can say pretty much anything you want about me or about Trump or anybody else who's, quote, in the public eye. If you said that same stuff about your brother-in-law, who just has a good job and works in Seattle, he could sue you for libel or for slander. But I can't, and neither can Trump. Sorry.
I wish that we could.
I'm sorry. But what I would like is some actual documentation. I'd like Trump to come out and say, here's the fake news. Here's what he's actually started doing this in his rallies. And the problem is that what he says the news said, his words are lies about what he says the press is lying about. So, and his followers, his believers, his true believers, his authoritarian followers are just sucking it all up and going, oh, yes, Donald Trump said it, it must be true. Sarah Sanders did the same thing yesterday in the press conference. She said that, newspapers had called for her to be strangled. No, somebody said that they'd like to wring her neck. It's an expression of speech, right? And she said that they've calling for harassment of me for the rest of my life. No, that's not what was said. And she's over at Daily Kos, and I'm guessing the Times and the Washington Post and whatnot, they're fact-checking Sarah Sanders now, but she's doing this whole victim thing about, the press, they're out to get me too. And it's just getting a little old,
It is very old. It's an ugly, vicious, disgusting cycle. I can't believe people are still buying into it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but
tragically. Thank you so much. I love your show and your insight, Tom.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. And yeah, you're right. People are still buying into it. And that's all the more the tragedy because, this could be a pretty good country if we could just get along with each other. And I really think it's possible. I don't think it's possible, though, with this kind of leadership, if you want to call it leadership. We'll be back with more of the program right after this. Oh, hi. I was just meditating, listening to the sounds of the ocean from this app, from my brainwaves that are being detected by the Muse headband. To find out more about it, check out choosemuse.com, code TOM. The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Superbeats. More information is available over at tomsbeets.com, THOMSBEETS.com, or by calling 800-568-9889. The new X chair, it's the X3, is just such a big upgrade from even the old X chair, which I think was one of the very best chairs, if not the best chair, office chair on the market. Check it out at xchairtom, THOM, xchairtom.com. Cameron Hughes travels the world looking for the finest wines and then bottles them in this lot way so that you can save an enormous amount of money. Last night, Louise and I had the 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was extraordinary. You can learn more at chwine.com/Tom.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Nancy in Lemon Grove, California. Hey, Nancy, what's on your mind today?
Hi. Listen, I just wanted to say that in the next 3 weeks, 3 weeks from now, the indictments are going to come out, and by mid next month in September, Trump's going to be gone. Jared and Trump are both going to be gone, and by mid-December, he will be in a mental hospital/prison. So I'm very hopeful at this point. I think it's going to come out very soon. So,
Nancy, are you psychic? I mean, I'm wondering what you know that I don't know. What I think I know is that there's a 90-day window before an election. The election is November, I think, the 6th this year. And that during that 90-day window, you can't indict. I mean, you can if it was really radical, if Trump went out and shot somebody. But generally speaking, you don't indict a politician inside that 90-day window because you don't want to disrupt the election. So if Mueller doesn't, and that 90-day window expires in about 4 days, I think, or 5 days. And so if Mueller doesn't indict Trump right away, he's going to have to wait until after the election.
no, it's coming down very soon, and by mid-December,
How do you know?
he'll be. I just do.
You just do.
I just do.
Nancy, I hope you're right.
I do too.
Although you know,
it's going to happen.
The other reason that you don't indict somebody 90 days before an election is that the blowback could cause their side to win. People would view that as unfair electioneering. So we'll see. But Nancy, time will tell. Time will tell. Brian in Fort Collins, Colorado. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, can I just quickly say something about the 90-day moratorium?
Sure.
It seems like that would only apply to somebody that was actually up for election, but I don't know.
I think at law that's the case, and I may be wrong on that, but I believe that that's the case. And you're right, Trump is not up for re-election, but I think that it's broadly interpreted by prosecutors as, you know, this could produce blowback that you don't want to have. So you just wait until after the election's over. Back to you.
I get you, Tom. You've got a terrific show going here, Tom, and it's being driven by the callers, but the interaction between you and the callers is just phenomenal, I wanted to say. So I've got a syllogism for you, Tom.
Okay.
Political syllogism. So it goes like this. If primaries are like falling in love, and if elections are like getting engaged, then the commitment that comes after the election, the long-term commitment, is like being married.
The governance, yes. And things don't always work out the way either party wants, and you have to resolve things and meet in the middle sometimes. And yeah, that's a great metaphor. I like it.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it, Tom. And finally, I'll just throw in Nancy's call reminded me that Mika Brzezinski, I don't know if you have time to watch
Morning Joe
this, but I mean, she came out and said that she thinks that Trump is unwell, and they were words like unhinged thrown around. And is there a report from this Omerta woman about how the Donald Trump that she used to know has disintegrated before her eyes or something like that?
Oh, Omarosa, you're talking about. Yeah, she's got a book coming out, and apparently a piece of it was leaked today where she said that she thought that Trump was mentally deteriorating right in front of us all. You know, on the one hand, he seems quite functional to me. I watched part of his rally last night and part of his rally the night before last. On the other hand, if you go back and look at video of him in the 1980s when he was being interviewed, particularly on issues of politics, he was so on top of things. He was at the top of his game. And right now, he has to repeat things 3 times to remember them. So I don't know, Brian. You know, if he's deteriorating, he's come down from a pretty good level of intellectual capacity. Yeah, but, you know, deterioration happens. The guy's in his 70s, and he's had a lousy diet and no exercise most of his life. What a week, huh? What an amazing week. I'm sure next week, you know, this nonstop reality show just doesn't, you know, it's just rolling along. So in the meantime, don't forget, you've got to get out there and get active. The democracy depends on you. Tag You're It. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
Cameron Hughes travels the world looking for the finest wines and then bottles them in this lot way so that you can save an enormous amount of money. Last night, Louise and I had the 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was extraordinary. You can learn more at chwine.com/Tom. The new X chair, it's the X3, is just such a big upgrade from even the old X chair, which I think was one of the very best chairs, if not the best chair, office chair on the market. Check it out at xchairtom, T-H-O-M, xchairtom.com. Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. More information is available over at tomsbeets.com, THOMSBEETS.com, or by calling 800-568-9889. Oh, hi. I was just meditating, listening to the sounds of the ocean from this app, from my brainwaves that are being detected by the Muse headband. To find out more about it, check out choosemuse.com, code TOM.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.